With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to GB News Saturday. I'm Dawn Neeson. For the next 3 hours, I'll be keeping you company on TV, online and on digital radio. Keep you up to date on all the stories that really matter to you. Coming up this hour. Security experts have been called in to analyse WhatsApp messages at the heart of the latest Westminster scandal after William Ragg, the chairman of a Commons Select Committee, admitted handing over the personal phone numbers of colleagues to a man he met on a gay dating app. Then very strong winds up to 70 miles an hour and heavy snow battering parts of the UK today as Storm Kathleen causes chaos. The Met Office says rain, snow and unseasonably strong winds are moving towards the UK and Ireland from the southwest. Batten down that garden furniture, folks. And now, notorious Newsnight interview with the Duke of York, which has turned into a Netflix drama, has been released, with Rufus Sewell playing Prince Andrew and Gillian Anderson playing the interviewer Emily Maitlis. But will the much-hyped film reopen those old wounds? Enough to make you sweat, isn't it? Right, OK, this show is nothing without you and your views, though. So let me know your thoughts on all the stories we'll be discussing about today, or anything you want to chat about. Basically, it's Saturday, weekend, enjoy yourself. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com, or message me on our socials. We're at GB News. But first, let's get those news headlines with Ray Addison.
Cheers, Dawn. Good afternoon. 1 minute past 12, our top stories this hour. Power cuts have left thousands without electricity across the island of Ireland as Storm Kathleen brings strong winds to parts of the UK. Dozens of flights have also been cancelled due to gusts of up to 70 miles an hour in Northern Ireland and the west of Britain. Around 70 flights have been called off so far. A yellow weather warning for wind is in effect until 10 p.m. and covers Cornwall, much of Wales, part of Lancashire and Cumbria and up into central Scotland and then Northern Ireland. A Conservative MP says that he was the first whistleblower to alert police to the parliamentary honey trap sexting scam. Bosworth MP Dr Luke Evans says he was the victim of cyber flashing as the Met launched an investigation into unsolicited messages. On Thursday, Tory MP William Ragg told The Times that he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing colleagues' phone numbers. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted.
The first set of messages I got was on a day I was with my wife, and I got a one-time open photo on WhatsApp of an explicit image of a naked lady. As soon as I got these, the next day I reported it to the police, the authorities and the Chief Whip. 10 days later, I got another set of messages. This time, however, I was sat with my team in the constituency office, so we were able to record the conversation and catch photos and videos of the messages coming through, including another explicit female image. I put my name up to say, well, I hope others come forward. I'm just pleased I blew the whistle, reported it to the authorities, and it's now being looked into.
Rail passengers are facing fresh travel chaos as train drivers continue striking in their long-running pay dispute. Members of ASLEF at 6 companies have walked out, leaving some areas with no services all day. Chiltern, TransPennine Express and Northern will not run any trains, while there will be reduced services on Great Western, LNER and Heathrow Express. Meanwhile, engineering work means there will be no trains between London's Paddington and Reading. Nearly £17 million worth of drugs has been seized by the Royal Navy after it intercepted smuggling speedboats in the Caribbean Sea. Across 2 operations, HMS Trent seized 200 kilos of cocaine following a port visit to the island of Martinique. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says it shows the Navy's commitment to disrupt and dismantle drug traffickers. Former PM Boris Johnson has described calls to end arms sales to Israel as shameful. There's been international demands to hold Israel to account for the deaths of 7 aid workers, including 3 Brits, John Chapman, James Henderson and James Kirby. They were killed by an Israeli airstrike. Israel has since dismissed 2 officers, describing the deaths as a grave mistake. Lord Cameron says the UK will now carefully review the findings of a report into the incident. Workers across the country have today been granted the legal right to request flexible working from the day that they start a new job. Previously, it only applied if someone had worked for their employer for 26 weeks or more. Flexible working is defined as a way that suits an employee's needs, for example, having flexible timings or working from home. Experts believe it could benefit millions and increase productivity. So-called reckless Tory tax pledges will leave home buyers worse off, Labour is warning. The party says the Conservatives' ambition to scrap national insurance contributions will create a £46 billion black hole. Their analysis suggests first home buyers could be £280 worse off each year due to an increase in mortgage repayments. Shadow Minister Alison McGovern told us the policy will harm young couples.
It's hardly fair to put at risk that position that people are in when they're trying to buy their first home, when they're really saving and making these sorts of unfunded tax commitments has that effect. It's worse for people who are in that position who struggle to be able to buy their own home.
Police have released footage of a motorcyclist caught in a sting operation riding at grossly excessive speeds. Kieran Jones was recorded travelling at 80 miles an hour in a 30 zone on the A22 in East Sussex on no less than 7 separate occasions. He had concealed his number plate to avoid detection, and when finally caught, he did admit to a string of charges, including dangerous driving. Jones was disqualified for 3 years and ordered to complete 225 hours of unpaid work. More than 150 people have been rescued from floodwaters in Australia after 24 hours of torrential rain there. 72 rescues have been carried out in Sydney alone, where low-lying suburbs saw dangerous flooding with a month's worth of rainfall. Residents in New South Wales were warned to move to higher ground as emergency services received over 4,000 calls for help. Officials say flood levels in Western Sydney are continuing to rise. Well, for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code. There you go, it's on your screen right now, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now let's get back to GB News Saturday with Dawn.
Thank you very much, Frey. Right, let's get straight into today's stories, shall we? Government security experts have been called to analyse the WhatsApp messages at the heart of the Westminster sex scandal. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted, and sources have told GB News more are coming forward. It's after Tory MP William Ragg told The Times he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing phone numbers. Right, OK. Can't wait to talk about the story with our wonderful GB News senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, hello. Lovely to see you on a Saturday afternoon. Nigel, we normally talk about fairly boring stuff like polls, who's doing what, da-da-da-da-da. But this is an interesting story this week, isn't it? What do you make about what we've learned?
Well, I will have to see where it goes next, because I think there is a lot more to come out on this one than we've seen so far. There is genuine sympathy at Westminster for William Ragg, not least because of his mental health issues. He's admitted being stupid. He's suffering the public humiliation as a result of that, and he must feel absolutely wretched at the moment. But what is also quite interesting is the very muted response from both Labour and the Lib Dem. So it looks like they've been told, look, don't make a big thing out of this. There's a lot more to come out, and we shall see what that actually is.
This is the one thing that surprises me, Nigel. It has been a really muted response. Normally, especially so close to an election, the opposition would be jumping all over this, and yet it's all been very, well, you know, almost #be kind.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right, and that's what I've found pretty significant too. That it feels like that MPs have been told, don't make a big thing out of this. Now, either that's on the advice of security services or the police via the Speaker of the House of Commons. And the question obviously is, who exactly is behind this? This is clearly more than just a prank. So you're either talking about criminal blackmailers, or, and that must be the worry for the security services, the activity of a foreign government like Russia, China or Iran.
Now, it is obviously in the hands of Lester Pleat and is being investigated. But how are MP... I mean, you're at the heart of all this, Nigel. You understand how Parliament works. How are MPs themselves feeling about it? It must be very unnerving for all of them. But also, you know, have their numbers been given out as well? We don't know whose numbers have been given away yet, do we?
No, we don't, and that's why obviously the interest will be if a foreign government has got hold of it. I mean, I think that the Tory MP Luke Evans did absolutely the right thing. The moment he got one of these things, he went straight to the police and told them about it, and he informed the House authorities. That's the way to handle it. So it's a warning to MPs: don't get sucked in by something like this, and in a sense, it's a warning to everybody else. I mean, what you don't do is put any intimate pictures out there, because you never know what will happen to them.
Nigel, I'm far too polite to ask you whether you would ever be tempted. But I mean, honestly, if someone I didn't know randomly just said, "Can you send us a naked picture of yourself?" your instant reaction is going to be just go away, and that's putting it politely, isn't it? Why are... Look, I'm trying to be kind as well, but why are some, and it has to be said, men in power so stupid?
I think that you're absolutely right. I wouldn't do it either. I think that when it comes to politicians, bear in mind they are sort of risk takers. They wouldn't be in politics unless they were. So I'm always amazed at the stupid things that MPs or ministers end up doing. That they get themselves involved in sex scandals or money scandals, and you'd think they'd see these things coming, but they appear not to.
Indeed, they don't, do they? And they're running the country. Oh, God. Nigel, thank you very much. Nigel Nelson, our senior political commentator, who has not sent any dirty pics out, evidently. Right. Joining me now is former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, who's got an inside take on this, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on a Saturday afternoon. Now, I'm sorry, look, we are trying to be kind. We know that William Ragg has mental health issues with depression and anxiety, etc., etc. But this is... I'm going to come to you first, Charlie, because you've worked in the House. You've been a special advisor. This is incredibly stupid behaviour. How on earth are people getting still sucked into this sort of sexting honey trap? I mean, to use the old-fashioned word.
Yeah, it's a good question, and that is the question, because it's not just Will, it's other MPs, it's journalists as well, by the sounds of things, as the story evolves. I just want to sort of test the question about what is the actual crime. There is no crime, obviously, if you are 36, if you are male, if you are gay, if you're on a gay dating app, if you are an MP, if you're a Conservative MP. There is no crime in exchanging... He
hasn't been charged with a crime, though.
No, exactly. No. But the challenge is... it is perfectly, I would say, wrongly, but it is just a fact, a norm these days that if you are on a dating app, people will exchange messages, really? They will exchange pictures.
Don't sound so surprised.
And yes, exactly. I think Matt and I sort of shared a look at you because this is a way of communicating. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Obviously, what Will did to hand out other people's mobile numbers was totally wrong. That's what needs investigating. That's what he's apologised for. It's no crime if somebody sends you a naughty pic and you feel like responding in kind. There is nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So I don't want to get bogged down into that side of things.
No.
But the fishing for information thereafter and putting yourself as a member of Parliament or someone that's in the public eye in a position where you could be abused and you have that...
I disagree with Charlie, I have to say, on the first part of that. So after I'm going to be a little bit personal, but after the end of my first marriage and before my second marriage, before I got together with my now wife, hope that's it for me in marriage.
If you're listening, I'd probably block your ears up now, Mrs. Stadlen. Just a suggestion.
I did quite a lot of dating, as you might when you're a 40-year-old and you're sort of left almost high and dry.
Desperate.
Right, sort of, yeah. I dated quite a few women, and I was suddenly plunged into this world, or found myself into this world that was very different to the world I'd inhabited before I'd met my first wife. So much of the stuff was carrying on online, right? And some of the dating I did was on apps, some of it was, as it were, in real life, if you see what I mean. I mean, I met all the people it concerned, but I was, first of all, sharing naked images of myself is not my thing. But secondly, even had it been my thing, there was no way I would have done that. And that's why I disagree with Charlie, because particularly if you're in the public eye, and I'm vaguely in the public eye, but even if you're not, do not put stuff like that online, because you are then a hostage to criminality.
This is my problem, Charlie. And you've worked within the corridors of power. You advised Michael Gove. You've advised MPs. Matthew's got a point. It's not the match that what he did was wrong. Okay, I accept that young folk do that. Obviously, I've been married since God was a boy, so I don't do this sort of thing. And the husband wouldn't ask. But I get that people do that on dating apps. But Matthew's point is, William Ragg is in a position of power. He's influential. He should have thought this through. It's not just an ordinary bloke on a dating app looking to meet someone on a Saturday night. There's much, much more to this than just swapping some saucy pictures.
Sure.
I mean, how common is it in the Houses of Parliament that this sort of thing would go on?
Well, I wouldn't know because
I know you're not there anymore, obviously, but
I take exactly that line, and I would have taken the line that Luke Evans has obviously taken. Dr. Luke Evans, another MP that's come forward today to say he received images, and he then it went away. Then another message came through. He was able to screenshot or take a copy and then pass that on to the authorities to say this is
straight
inappropriate.
away.
Totally,
That's the point.
and that is the totally right approach to take. Again, it's not a justification, but more of an explanation on behalf of Will's side, and it plays into not just this particular incident, but you always hear incidents that are wrong, by the way, of maybe MPs having too much to drink, inappropriate behaviour. You always hear about Pestminster, Sexminster, whether it's a sexting scandal, and it comes back to, again, no justification, but an explanation maybe as to why Westminster probably does need to change a bit in terms of the working practices. If you are an MP, if you are a young, gay, single MP, where you're working long hours, where you are in the public eye, where now today on social media you get a barrage of abuse, your email inbox is littered with criticism and critique and people saying that they don't like you, they'll never vote for you, how terrible you are, day in, day out. If you do find yourself working late at night in the House of Commons, voting until 10, 11, 12 at night, if you have got access to alcohol, if you do need a bit of an ego booster and you log onto an app and somebody says, oh, how lovely you are, and you flatters you no end, I can understand how easy it may be to fall into that trap.
To whip your phone out and take a picture of your bits.
If that gives you a boost, and if you think it's going to give you a boost, if you're exchanging it with somebody else in consensual terms, then people will do funny things, and people will take drugs, people will drink, people will do all kinds of funny things, Dawn. There's no explanation. I'm not justifying it, but I'm explaining.
Yeah.
With the idea that we live in such a perfect society and nobody ever does this at all, is for the birds.
I think one of the reasons, perhaps, we're speculating here, why Labour have not gone in hard here is because they may think that they're almost there, but the grace of God go I. And they were worried that such things might then hit them, and if they've taken a really hard line now, how will they look further down the line?
I did wonder that, actually, being cynical.
I think there are two things. One is, you were right that William Ragg didn't commit a crime by sharing a picture of himself, but I think it was. I do think that was risky behaviour, and also, by the way, I think it's irresponsible because if you are in the public eye, you are more at threat of being a target for blackmail, and you kind of need to be able to see that through. This is quite I mean, he's a young guy, right? He became an MP when he was about 27, I think. But nonetheless, he's been an MP for a while, I think since 2015. It's very easy to judge. I'm not particularly interested in his case per se. We have to, MPs and all of us, and I think the Chancellor was right yesterday, we have to learn lessons from this. We have to be reminded that cybersecurity really matters. Then there's the second question. How did he behave once he'd become a victim? And he became a victim when he was threatened. And of course, and rightly so, there should be sympathy for him because he is a victim.
Yes.
At the same time, did he respond to being a victim in the right way by sharing other MPs' phone numbers? No, he didn't, and he's apologised for that.
Well, this is the thing. As you alluded to at the very first off, Charlie, that what he's done isn't a crime. It's stupid in the highest levels of stupidity, in my opinion, because he does have a very responsible position, and you are very, very vulnerable to blackmail and to being targeted. And we know there are lots of what's the phrase now? Bad actors out to get you. But it is the leaking of information. I watched one being interviewed the other night, often about much younger advisors as well, their information being handed over. Now, that it's not illegal, of course, but it's profoundly wrong. And it could be illegal. It could go against your contract of employment in other industries you work.
But it probably breaks data protection laws.
Yes, and that is exactly what is wrong about this particular case. And I mean, again, Westminster is a funny old world where the whole point
is a bubble, isn't it?
Well,
it really
is. It is, but just Parliament itself, is central lobby because you can be a member of the public and you can go down and see your MP to lobby them, to meet them, to engage with them. So there will always be information exchange. So if somebody came to me, for example, and said, or if it was another MP and said, I really need to get in touch with, Michael Gove. Obviously, I would always check with Michael to see, this MP, is keen to meet with you. Have you got their number already? He will either, and he usually did, by the way. I mean, I know MPs tend to all have each other's numbers anyway, but, I would never pass on anyone's details.
No, that's what I mean.
But it is a way in which you can say, oh, yes, I know someone who can help, or yes, you need to talk to that person. And when it's within, if it's Tory party circles, and I'm there's no speculation, particularly on this case, in terms of who will or any other MP has had communication with. But it is a bit more loose in terms of saying, oh, yes, I know someone who can help, or yes, I'll hand you their details, or I can put you in touch with that person. It is a lobbying environment. It is supposed to be a networking environment to get things done. If every time we said, oh, no, you have to fill out this form, or no, you can't do that until I've spoken to so-and-so, nothing would ever get done. So it is a funny environment. It is very different to normal working practices. And that's why when things like this happen, they are under the spotlight, because the lines are always so blurred when it comes to relationships, when it comes to working hours, when it comes to working practices.
Data protection laws, though, have been significantly and seriously tightened, and I think it's all of our responsibility, whether we're in politics or not, to be aware of that law. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse.
Right, OK, well, is it your way of communicating? Would you do this? Let us know. GBviews at GBnews. What do you reckon? Do you have sympathy? You can probably tell that I'm not overloaded with sympathy on someone that is supposedly in power running the country. Any case, for all the best analysis and opinion on that story and much more, go to our website, gbnews.com. Now, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News. It's Saturday and there's loads more coming up on today's show. Strong winds and heavy snow, oh God, are battering parts of the UK today as Storm Kathleen causes chaos. Our reporter will be braving the storm to bring you the latest. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
The big thing here, Tom, is it actually even credible or possible that by 2030 we're going to have carbon
If we wanted to do it, is it an engineering possibility? Yes. Could we do it if we wanted to? Yes, we could. But so far, we're not on course to doing it. This government has not done a particularly good job of doing what we could do if we set our mind to it. The question remains to be seen whether a Labour government would do better.
You see, I wonder whether the only way you could even get anywhere near this is just to import more energy. And when we import stuff, we say, there's no carbon dioxide emissions. So really, I just wonder, and it's a bit like steel making and many other arguments, aren't we just conning ourselves?
Well, I don't think we're conning ourselves. I think we're not putting in the effort we need to get to where we say we want to get to. And, you know, we can do this stupidly or we can do it smartly. And you and I have talked before about, well, if you build nuclear power stations, that's not a very smart way to do it. If you insulate
Well, you say that. Yeah, go on.
Well, you didn't disagree with me, as I recall.
My worry with...
Maybe changing your mind. You're allowed to do that.
Look, nuclear's fine, but we ain't going to have it by 2030.
No, that's absolutely true. We certainly can agree about that. The key real thing is, what can you do fastest and quickest that will drive people's bills down soonest? And that, for an incoming Labour government, driving bills down and incomes up will be their core priority. So what can you do? Well, the first thing you need to do is make every single building in this country leak tight, because we've got the... Sorry?
New build.
No, every single building. New buildings, all the buildings we've got, they should be critical national infrastructure. They're the leakiest buildings in Europe. That really reduces our competitiveness. I'm talking about not just homes, I'm also talking about all of our small and medium-sized enterprises, where growth is going to come from.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Off to a cracking start to the show so far, and you need to catch up on what we've just been talking about. eye-popping, quite literally. Now, very strong winds of up to 70 mile an hour and heavy snow battering parts of the UK today as Storm Kathleen causes chaos. The Met Office says rain, snow and unseasonably strong winds are moving towards the UK and Ireland from the southwest. Yellow weather warnings for snow, wind and rain remain in place until 10 o'clock tonight. Oh, my God, welcome to spring, people. Joining me now is GB News Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie, who is hopefully standing somewhere very dangerous. Yes, exactly. We love it. We get weather warnings where you say, don't go out, it's dangerous, and we send Doogie to stand by some big waves. Doogie, you look a bit windswept. What's it like there?
Yeah, it is very, very high gusty winds on the east coast of County Down here in Northern Ireland. Storm Kathleen made land this morning in around Cork, Kerry and Waterford. There it did structural damage. There's a lot of power outages in the Republic of Ireland. It's now almost split up the middle of Ireland, and it's making its way towards Galway, Mayo and Donegal on the west coast. And here on the east coast of Northern Ireland, we are really seeing heavy gusts of winds. But in the last hour or so, I managed to drive inland a bit, and those gusts are hitting inland, but there's no constant wind the further inland you go. That might save an awful lot of infrastructural problems there, especially with trees coming down and taking power lines out. But overall today, there's been about 70 flights cancelled or running late between the island of Ireland, north and south, with the mainland UK as this storm starts to really now take a grip. And it is and going to cause problems throughout the next 24 hours. And anybody that would think of coming to the coast would be advised not to at this minute in time.
You're called Doogie Beattie and you're working for GB News. Doogie, how well prepared do you think you've been in Northern Ireland for this weather? We always see these storms coming in. I think this one's named by the Irish Weather Authority, hasn't it? I mean, how well prepared do you feel over there? I mean, have people taken the right precautions? I mean...
Yeah, I mean, the Irish north and south and the Scottish are well used to this sort of weather. I mean, the electricity services in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland work very, very closely together at restoring power to homes. Our defences from the sea, although sometimes during the last hour or so it was high tide, a lot of the coastal roads are flooded now because it did breach. But really and truly, the Celtic nations are very used to high winds and the rain that comes with it, so we are really well prepared for this. It's just strange that it comes in April as opposed to March. The old saying in March is in like a lion, out like a lamb, or in like a lamb, out like a lion. Well, it's about 2 weeks late, but we are definitely well prepared for it.
Doogie, on the upside, one final quick point. I'm a trained observer that I am. I have spotted that it's not actually raining.
No, it's not. In fact, out of the wind, it's actually quite warm and pleasant. But when you come along the coast, it is coming off the Irish Sea. I mean, as I said to you, their high tide was about an hour ago. The wind, or the sea is going back out again. And the spray that's coming off the sea is the only real moisture that's in the air at this point. The rain came in the middle of the night, and that caused serious flooding throughout the UK, I think. And most definitely in Northern Ireland, lots of the roads are flooded, lots of standing water, but that's because the water table in the whole across Britain has been very, very high. We've had an extremely wet winter, and of course we could go into all the stuff about how shucks and rivers haven't been cleaned out in the last 4 or 5 years, and it would cause flooding in towns. We've seen that in November, December, but really it is quite a pleasant day out of the wind.
Brilliant. It actually looks quite pleasant and refreshing. That's Doogie Beattie in Northern Ireland there reporting on Storm Kathleen for us. Doogie will be bringing us up to date on the storm throughout the show. So, well, if he survives, obviously might get swept away by a wave or something. Any case, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Saturday, and there's loads more coming up. But first, let's get the news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Dawn. It's 12:30. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. And we start with some breaking news for you this afternoon. The human torso found at a nature reserve in Salford belonged to a man aged older than 40. A murder investigation was launched by Greater Manchester Police after the body part was found wrapped in plastic at Kersal Wetlands. The victim is believed to have been dead for a matter of days. DNA tests are ongoing to identify the man. Of course, this is an ongoing story. We'll bring you more here on GB News. Power cuts have left thousands without electricity across Ireland as Storm Kathleen brings strong winds to parts of the UK. Dozens of flights have also been cancelled due to gusts of up to 70 miles per hour in Northern Ireland and the west of Britain. Around 70 flights have been called off so far. A yellow weather warning for wind is in effect until 10 p.m. and covers Cornwall, much of Wales, parts of Lancashire and Cumbria, up into central Scotland and, of course, Northern Ireland. Rail passengers are facing fresh travel chaos as train drivers continue striking in a long-running pay dispute. Members of ASLEF at 6 companies have walked out, leaving some areas with no services all day long. Chiltern, TransPennine Express and Northern will not run any trains, while there'll be reduced services on Great Western, LNER and Heathrow Express. Meanwhile, engineering work means there will be no trains between London Paddington and Reading. A Conservative MP says he was the first whistleblower to alert police to the parliamentary honey trap sexting scam. Bosworth MP Dr Luke Evans says he was the victim of cyber flashing as the Met launched its investigation into unsolicited messages. On Thursday, Tory MP William Ragg told The Times that he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing colleagues' phone numbers. Nearly £17 million worth of drugs has been seized by the Royal Navy after it intercepted smuggling speedboats in the Caribbean Sea. Across 2 operations, HMS Trent seized 200 kilos of cocaine following a port visit to the island of Martinique. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says it shows the Navy's commitment to disrupt and dismantle drug traffickers. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back to Dawn now and GB News Saturday.
Thank you, Ray. Now, remember, you can get in touch about all the stuff we're talking about today or just have a chat, to be honest with you. Email me on gbviews@gbnews.com or message me on our socials. Very simple, @gbnews. Loads more coming up on today's show, though. A Netflix drama about the now infamous Newsnight interview of Prince Andrew has been released. But will it reopen old royal wounds? All of that and much more to come. I'm Dawn Neeson and you're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Can the Church of England not spend their money as they wish?
The Church of England can do amazing things for this country and for the world, and I'm not sure why it's chosen to focus on this specific issue. You know, one of the causes that I've always thought the Church was very good at were things called almshouses, which were basically houses that would be built on church estates for the needy. Not only did they want to spend £100 million on this fund, that they wanted to spend £1 billion on reparations as well. Well, why not spend 100 million or £1 billion on a new generation of almshouses, as opposed to just helping one group of people, black British people? Why not just help all people in need?
Alex?
Well, I just don't understand what the Church of England is trying to do. It's on its deathbed.
Congregations have reduced. I mean, deathbed is maybe...
Look, if we look over 20 years, it's dramatically lower than it used to be. And a lot of criticism from actual Christians come from the values that the Church of England are now propagating. And Justin Welby has a lot to answer for because, you know, not only are we seeing in the news there's mass conversion of illegal immigrants to a gay mass system in the UK, but now we're seeing them spending money... And as Albie actually pointed out correctly, in a way that doesn't really benefit broader society, it benefits a very small group of people. So I just don't know where it's going to end. This committee has also said £1 billion's not enough. It's 100 million, sorry.
Church commissioners are now hoping for a target of £1 billion.
I mean, it's woke nonsense, isn't it?
You could make the argument that this is charity. Austin Welby's job is to be a virtue signaller, is it not?
Charity discriminate? I mean, that's what he's saying. We're only going to give this to people from a specific skin colour or background. I don't think that's very Christian of them.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Hello and welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your tellies, online and on digital radio. Now, loads of you have been getting in touch, which is great because it's all about you, not my opinion, your opinion. You're the important ones here, right? OK, so keep them coming in, right? And a lot of you are agreeing with me as well, even though I'm trying to be kind on this one, about the honey trap MP. Susan, hi Susan, says, any person who thinks it is normal behaviour to send nude, intimate photos of oneself to strangers is not fit to be an MP. Mr Ragg should be relieved of his seat immediately. Well, kind of agree. I'm sorry, I know, should be kinder. David says, do they not have security checks? Being susceptible to this sort of thing is a security risk. Amazed that people are not screened by the MOD. Well, I mean... meanwhile, John says, this is not acceptable behaviour, regardless of who you are. It is not to be accepted. I wouldn't go as far as calling it perverted, which you have. I think, look, people do that thing. I accept that, but in a position of power. That's the point here. You're in a position of power. You know you're in a vulnerable position. You should be ultra wary, shouldn't you? And meanwhile, Phil says, yeah, this is an interesting point, isn't it, Phil? Labour are not saying anything about the honey trap until they're sure no Labour backbenchers are involved. It will all come out in the wash. Very interesting wash that'll be as well, won't it? Right, now, something else that's very interesting. A Netflix drama about the now notorious Newsnight interview with Prince Andrew has been released. The film stars Rufus Sewell as the Duke of York and Gillian Anderson as interviewer Emily Maitlis. But will it reopen old wounds? Joining me now is historian and broadcaster Rafe Haydon-Mancu, an expert on all things royal. Rafe, thank you so much for joining me on this Saturday afternoon.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate your time. Now, I mean, you know, is this going to make Prince Andrew sweat? I know, it's such an old joke, I know.
Well, but you're right. I mean, you know, from those claims about not being able to sweat due to some medical condition to that sort of children's party at a Pizza Express in Woking, this is the interview that the Duke of York simply cannot escape. You know, This was the worst PR disaster since another Duke, the Duke of Windsor, gave a Nazi salute to Adolf Hitler in 1937.
Not a lucky title, really, is it?
And, of course, you know, the decision of Amanda Thirsk, Prince Andrew's advisor, the very foolish decision to invite him to give this interview, will go down in the annals of history as one of the worst decisions ever. And, of course, not only did it break Prince Andrew, it also made Emily Maitlis, who's now, of course, an international star from this. And now anybody with a Netflix account can actually relive this bizarre episode in this series, which recounts essentially how they got the interview, the lead up to it, and then the interview itself, but doesn't go into the continuing fallout, which we still see even to this day. It's written by the BAFTA award-winning Peter Moffat and directed by the Emmy award-winning Philip Martin. So a very good team producing this, and it is a very slick production. As you say, Gillian Anderson, and she actually is, from what I've seen of it, very, very convincing as Emily Maitlis, and Rufus Sewell does a superb job as the Duke of York. Importantly, the film says it's a dramatisation inspired by real-life events. An important disclaimer which The Crown didn't put in front of its episodes, despite its historical inaccuracies and flights of fancy, so that's rather good. And it's based on the book Scoop, written by Sam McAllister, who was the producer who secured the interview with Prince Andrew. Now, you may remember when the Queen, when Prince Harry and Meghan were talking about racism in the royal family, the Queen had a statement saying recollections may vary. Well, it seems recollections may also vary in terms of how this interview was actually secured by Newsnight. If you watch this version of events in Scoop, this was essentially a one-woman deal done by Sam McAllister herself, and by so doing, she saved Newsnight from cuts by BBC budget accountants and so forth. Now, Emily Maitlis has her own three-part series coming out later this year called A Very Royal Scandal, and that will have a slightly different interpretation of events, in essence showing that actually it was a team effort by various people at Newsnight, and Sam McAllister was simply one of the characters involved in this. However, if you're part of the royal household, recollections may vary even more, because actually Amanda Thirsk, this advisor to Prince Andrew, had been approaching the BBC herself since 2018 to try to get an interview. So far from actually trying to pull Prince Andrew in, it was a question of actually trying to delay Prince Andrew to come on until he would agree to talk about the Epstein saga. So what the truth is, we don't really get to know, but actually I think this will be a very, very worrying moment for Prince Andrew, of course, who's very keen to rehabilitate himself.
Very much.
And to have these constant reminders coming out is not helpful, to put it mildly.
Because some of the things, I mean, he thought it was one of the best things ever done. Can we remember that? He thought, I thought that went rather well. And everyone's going, you sort of watched the interview, the original interview, like you used to watch Doctor Who when you were a kid, like from behind the sofa going, oh, my God, what's he going to say next? But he thought it went rather well. And some of the things that came out of it, you know, the fact that I can't sweat because of something that happened when he was serving, the pizza incident in where was it, Woking?
In Pizza Express in Woking.
Yeah, absolutely. All these have gone down in history now. But the one thing that gets me is he's still, and the latest picture we saw of the Duke of York was photographed riding a horse in Windsor on Friday. The timing, smiling. And the timing of this is that we very rarely see him, Rafe, don't we? So the fact that he was out on his horse being photographed at the same time as this was out on Netflix, it makes you think that he's still thinking, I'm Prince Andrew, this isn't going to touch me.
Well, of course, he's a very proud man, and of course he doesn't want people to think that he's letting all of this get him down, and so this is, I would imagine, his way of asserting that, you know, look, I'm still going about my own duties, it's very much business as usual, and I'm biding my time. But you're quite right to bring up those instances in the interview, which really struck many people to be how out of touch with reality can someone be to make so many shocking statements, such as saying, I don't regret my relationship with Jacob Epstein because it led to many useful opportunities. Quite astounding sort of things. Convicted and sent to prison, because it was a very useful location for us to use. And then being asked about that infamous photograph where he's seen clutching Victoria Jeffrey and saying, well, that's me, but I can't tell whether that's really my hand or not. I mean, it stretches incredulity to the least.
Is it? No, we're running out of time, unfortunately, Ralph, but is it stupidity? There's a lot of that happening in the show today, not from me, hopefully. Is it stupidity, or is it arrogance, or is it a dangerous mix of the both?
I think there may be some truth in that. You might think that I couldn't possibly comment, but certainly it's a degree of being out of touch and living in another world, and being interviewed by one of the heavy hitters at the BBC. Rather, they could have gone for someone who was a much lighter choice, but they didn't want to be seen to be evading the tough questions.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he was very poorly briefed.
He was, actually one of the biggest PR disasters of all time, and he thought it went terribly well, didn't he? Rafe Hedder-Mankiw, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Well, let me know what you think. think? I mean, are you watching it? What do you think? GB Views at GB News. You're with me, Dawn Neeson, on GB News Saturday, and there's loads more coming up. Now, if you're a sports fan, I bet you're excited for a chock-a-block weekend of rivalries. Celtic take on Rangers, while Man U take on Liverpool. And we've also got a mascot story. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Kathleen is the main talking point today, bringing some very strong winds across the UK. It's situated out to the west at the moment and slowly pushes its way northwards as we go through the rest of Saturday. Those winds will be strongest across western parts of the UK with yellow wind warnings in force. We could see gusts here, particularly for Northern Ireland, Irish Sea coast of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps even up to 70 miles an hour this afternoon, so that could cause some travel disruption. Elsewhere, though, it will be a generally dry day, some patchy rain in places, some heavy showers across western parts of Scotland, but highs of 20 or 21 degrees, perhaps even 22 across eastern parts of Anglia, so likely to be the warmest day of the year so far. Through Saturday evening, we see a band of heavy rain pushing up from the southwest, and there could be some hail and thunder mixed in there too, so some local flooding possible. Winds will gradually ease a little, but still remaining breezy overnight and turning a little drier across much of England and Wales into the early hours of the morning. And generally a mild night, temperatures holding up well above freezing across the UK. Sunday starts a little bit drier across England and Wales, but another band of rain pushes its way eastwards through the early morning. It will still be a very breezy day, but the strongest winds on Sunday likely to be across northwestern parts of Scotland. We could see gusts here of 60 to 70 miles an hour, so perhaps some travel disruption in places. There will be plenty of showers around on Sunday, and it will still be a mild day with temperatures above average and highs of 16 or 17 degrees.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your tellies, online and on digital radio. Now, my favourite bit of the show is reading what you're thinking. Lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts, and some of them I can even read out loud. Thank you for that. gbviews@gbnews.com is if you want to send your thoughts in as well. On the storm, and leave Pod Doogie's hair out of it, by the way. He's standing in a blooming hurricane almost. You can't have a go at his hair, poor man. Meanwhile, Jack, talking about the storm, says, afternoon, Dawn. I'm an artist and meant to be painting a seascape on a hotel on the Blackpool front. All last week, rubbish weather. Next week, the same. I should have been a civil servant working from home. Yeah, because they're all going on strike as well, aren't they? The irony of them going into the office to do a picket line so they can work at home and not go to the office. In any case, that's not lost on me. And loads of you have been getting in touch about the honey trap MP. A lot of people are saying David says, when I worked for a certain defence company, I know I was security checked to ensure I would not be susceptible to blackmail. I'm amazed MPs are not treated the same. And if I ever give in to blackmail, I would lose my job and never get employment in a similar post. That should apply to ministers as well. And lots of you thinking along the same lines. Not a lot of sympathy, it has to be said. Right, now, it's shaping up to be a weekend of footballing rivalries. Tomorrow, we'll see Rangers take on Celtic in the Old Firm derby and Manchester United take on Liverpool. Joining me now is a sports broadcaster and journalist Aidan McGee to talk us through the big games and, more importantly, the mascot story. Let's start with the football itself, shall we?
Yeah, why not? So, tomorrow, Liverpool travel to Old Trafford. They went there 3 weeks ago, lost in the FA Cup. I was at the game. Different dynamic there compared to today, but neither of these clubs can ever take that game lightly. They really can't, especially not when you've got real trophies at stake with the Premier League up for grabs. We know that Manchester City are behind at the moment at Selhurst Park. Palace are beating them 1-0. Arsenal kick off later at 5:30 against Brighton. And for the first time in years, probably I reckon since about 1999, the year United won the treble, I think we've got a genuine three-way title race, and we love that because the best thing about it, Dawn, is that they don't have to play each other. They've all played each other. City, Arsenal, and Manchester City have all played each other, so it's a shootout now between now and the end of the season.
Exciting.
It is. I mean, you know, you've got the point situation is extremely tight, but then a spanner gets thrown in the works. Palace taking the lead, as we said. I mean, we're not saying it's going to stay like that.
Let's just equalise that game.
Let's just equalise. There you go. They can't take anything for granted, can you? So that's what I mean. That's why it's exciting. And we've had the tragedy chanting issue as well, with Jurgen Klopp saying yesterday we need to bring an end to it, because obviously there's Hillsborough, there's Heysel, there's the Munich 58 between the two clubs, and Eric Ten Hag is going to use his programme notes tomorrow to call for calm because there were some arrests when they met 3 weeks ago.
Right, talking of chanting and arrests, the Old Firm derby up in Scotland, under Scotland's new hate law,
it's ridiculous.
It's quite a busy time up there, aren't
they're going to be making arrests for approximately 45,000 people, I would imagine.
Yeah, busy niche.
Yeah, it's the first time away fans have been allowed in for quite some time.
Of course.
I thought that, I mean, if the point situation is this, Celtic are a point ahead, but Rangers have got a game in hand, so this game is crucial. They're saying in Scotland, they're saying north of the border, that this is the biggest Old Firm game probably in about 10, 15 years.
Wow.
And I don't think that's an exaggeration, because whereas they met earlier in the season, it was crucial, it was at Parkhead. I felt that, I mean, Celtic won it against the run of form, actually, even though they were at home, and that kept things tight. Rangers have only lost one match since then. They've taken 30 out of 33 points. That was at home to Motherwell. Celtic lost that day as well, and it's very rare that either of these two clubs lose. And so tomorrow really is pivotal. And if you look at Philippe Clement, he said in his press conference, I don't want mathematicians in my dressing room. I want people to go out there and not look at the table and not think about permutations. I want them to go out there and win the game.
Just go and play football.
Just go and play the game, yeah.
I mean, God, I wish we could just do that in every game. Right, but the most exciting football story of the entire week concerns a giant cat.
Yes, that's right, big furry cat. He's known as the furry Lothario. Now, he's been a mascot of QPR for probably about 16, 17 years now. He's called Jude the cat. Now, the history is that QPR had a real black cat back in the 70s during their real heyday, when they finished second.
On screen now.
Picture of Jude the cat. There he is, dancing there for the benefit of our radio viewers. That reminds me of me in my party days, really, back at UEA in Norwich. And so
I hope you didn't dress up like that.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't mind a bit of fancy dress, but not that sort. So they had a real black cat, and then they commercialised it back in the early 2000s, and actually had, as most clubs have, a proper mascot, a big furry costume and everything. Now, I'm not saying it's been the same person in that suit for all that time, but the club, there was a story leaking around about on Monday. They thought it was an April Fool, that Jude the cat had been sacked. And he's very popular on match days, Dawn.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But apparently, according to the Daily Mail and the Sun, and this story's gone all over the world today as well, apparently reports are saying that he's been sacked because he's been a little bit over-friendly with female members of the crowd.
Of flirting.
Flirting, yeah.
Flirt when you're dressed as a 6-foot cat.
Well, I don't know. I mean, an ex of mine had a photo with him some years ago. I think we've got the photo somewhere. And she's actually he got a bit friendly. You know, he took her hand like that. No, it was harmless, but I don't think she was expecting that level of attention from a big furry animal. He's, as I say, known as the furry Lothario.
So you're off to the game straight after this. So we'll find out whether he is actually there or not.
Well, yeah, I don't think the person under the costume will be there, but it's where they've done away with the entire mascot. They do have a mascot called Spark who runs concurrently, because I think you mentioned just off camera there that you do have 2 mascots, don't you? At most clubs now. So let's see if let's see what happens. We'll know. I should know in about an hour and a half time.
Oh, how many lives does that cat have? Lots more coming up in today's show. Not all about mascot, but let's have a look at the weather first, shall we?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Kathleen is still very much the talking point of our weather over the next day or so. Situated out to the west of the UK, it's going to bring us some very strong winds through the rest of Saturday and into the start of Sunday. Those strongest winds likely across western parts of the UK, Northern Ireland and Scotland, perhaps seeing gusts of 60 to 70 miles an hour through the rest of the evening. But it's through Saturday evening, a band of showers pushes its way north and eastwards. These likely to turn very heavy with some hail and thunder mixed in for southwestern parts of the UK. It will gradually turn drier for much of the UK through the early hours of Sunday morning, and it'll be a mild start to Sunday as well, with temperatures generally holding up in the high single figures. So after a brief drier start across the UK, another band of showers pushes its way north and eastwards through Sunday morning, again turning quite heavy in places, perhaps some localised flooding and travel disruption. Still a widely windy day on Sunday, the strongest winds though across northwestern parts of Scotland. Again, there could be gusts here of 60 to 70 miles an hour, so there could be some travel disruption through the afternoon. Another mild day across the UK, but temperatures down a touch on Saturday, maybe 16 or 17 degrees in the south, but still above average. Monday starts dry for Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, but further south, another band of rain pushes up from the southwest through Monday morning, so turning very wet and windy across these parts through Monday afternoon. Remaining unsettled through the first part of next week, temperatures still remaining a little bit above average, but hints of something drier through the second half of the week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Right, there's loads more coming up on today's show. We'll be delving more into this topic that's really got you going, the Westminster honeypot scandal. Sexting those pictures. Would you do it? Let me know. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't forget to get in touch. GBViews at GBNews. But don't send the pictures. Leave the pictures, OK? I don't need them. See you very soon.
You could win our biggest prize giveaway so far. First, there's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
It's the first time we've had an admission from someone who, at least used to be very senior in the party, saying that this election is not about winning, really, for the Conservatives now. It's about mitigating the losses.
There is broad recognition that this election has already been lost and that it's about damage limitation. And it is really important because it's the difference between whether, if Labour win a slim majority, then the fight is on for the next election. I know it seems silly to look 5 years ahead, but it does make a difference, versus basically accepting that we have 10 years of Labour government ahead.
Having an acknowledgement that the Tories are going to lose and lose badly, disastrously maybe, having that acknowledgement coming from somebody so senior is very demoralising for everybody else in the party, but also doesn't it make it then look rather immoral for them to just drag on right through to maybe November?
Personally, I think Rishi Sunak should name the date now. I think he should name it for October or November.
In terms of reform, if they're only 4 points behind the Conservatives in the latest poll, do we need to stop the narrative, which we have been using legitimately, saying, well, they're doing all right in the polls, but they won't win any seats? Do we need to change that perspective now?
I think it's really difficult to say. It depends on Reform's electoral strategy. There's a lot of evidence that in certain parts of the country with certain demographics, they do have a really good chance. So I think if they target seats in the red wall and other places where there's big disillusionment with the Conservatives and what they'd promised, I can't imagine that Reform are at the stage where they could take masses of seats. It's more about that portion of the vote that they'll be taking away that I think is going to result in that massive Labour landslide.
Hello and welcome back to GB News Saturday. Happy weekend, hope you're having a wonderful time. I'm Dawn Neeson, for the next 2 hours I'll be keeping you company on telly, online and on digital radio, keeping you up to date on the stories that really matter to you. Now, a cracking hour coming up, including government security experts have been called in to analyse the WhatsApp messages at the heart of the latest Westminster sex scandal, with William Ragg, the chairman of a Common Select Committee no less, handing over the personal phone numbers of colleagues to a man he met on a gay dating app. Then strong winds and heavy snow battering parts of the UK today as Storm Kathleen causes chaos. Batten down that garden furniture, people. And millions of people will receive a boost in take-home pay today following a cut to employee national insurance. From the start of the new tax year, Class 1 contributions will be reduced to 10 to 8%. But, big but, what does that actually mean to the pennies, increasingly our pennies, in your pocket? But this show is nothing without you and your views. It's not about me and what I think, it's about you. So let me know your thoughts on all the stories we were discussing today or anything you want to have a chat about. It's your show. Email me at gbviews@gbnews.com or message me on our socials. We're at GB News. But first, here's an idea. Let's get the news headlines with Ray Addison.
Great idea, Dawn. 1 minute past 3, our top stories this hour. Power cuts have left thousands without electricity across Ireland as Storm Kathleen brings strong winds. Dozens of flights have also been cancelled due to gusts of up to 70 miles an hour in Northern Ireland and the west of Britain too. Around 70 flights have been called off so far. A yellow weather warning for wind is in effect until 10 p.m. and covers Cornwall, much of Wales, parts of Lancashire and Cumbria and up into central Scotland and Northern Ireland. Our windswept Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie is in County Down.
It hit Cork, Waterford and Kerry. There it has done some structural damage and power outages. The storm has now basically surrounded the coastal areas of the island of Ireland. It is now making its way towards Galway, Mayo and Donegal, and it has come up the Irish Sea into the east coast here, and I'm standing in Northern Ireland about 25 miles away from the Isle of Man, and the winds are picking up. The gusts of the winds are the most damaging part here, and we'll expect many more flights to be cancelled over the next few hours.
Rail passengers are facing fresh travel chaos as train drivers continue striking in a long-running pay dispute. Members of ASLEF at 6 companies have walked out, leaving some areas with no services all day. Chiltern, Trans-Pennine Express and Northern will not run any trains, while there will be reduced services on Great Western, LNER and Heathrow Express. Engineering work means there will be no trains, meanwhile, between London, Paddington and Reading. The human torso found at a nature reserve in Salford belonged to a man aged older than 40. A murder investigation was launched by Greater Manchester Police after the body part was found wrapped in plastic at Kersal Wetlands. The victim is believed to have been dead for a matter of days. DNA tests are ongoing to identify the man. A Conservative MP says he was the first whistleblower to alert police to the parliamentary honey trap sexting scam. Bosworth MP Dr Luke Evans says he was the victim of cyber flashing as the Met launched an investigation into unsolicited messages. On Thursday, Tory MP William Ragg told The Times that he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing colleagues' phone numbers. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted.
The first set of messages I got was on a day I was with my wife, and I got a one-time open photo on WhatsApp of an explicit image of a naked lady. As soon as I got these, the next day I reported it to the police, the authorities and the Chief Whip. 10 days later, I got another set of messages. This time, however, I was sat with my team in the constituency office, so we were able to record the conversation and catch photos and videos of the messages coming through, including another explicit female image. I've put my name up to say, well, I hope others come forward. I'm just pleased I blew the whistle, reported it to the authorities, and it's now being looked into.
Nearly £17 million worth of drugs has been seized by the Royal Navy after it intercepted smuggling speedboats in the Caribbean Sea. Across two operations, HMS Trent seized 200 kilos of cocaine following a port visit to the island of Martinique. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says it shows the Navy's commitment to disrupt and dismantle drug traffickers. So-called reckless Tory tax pledges will leave homebuyers worse off, Labour is warning. The party says that the Conservative ambition to scrap national insurance contributions will create a £46 billion black hole. Their analysis suggests first home buyers could be £280 worse off each year due to an increase in mortgage repayments. Shadow Minister Alison McGovern told us the policy will harm young couples.
But it's hardly fair to put at risk that position that people are in when they're trying to buy their first home, when they're really saving and making these sorts of unfunded tax commitments has that effect. It's worse for people who are in that position who struggle to be able to buy their own home.
For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Dawn and GB News Saturday.
Thank you very much, Ray. Right, let's get straight into today's stories, shall we? Now, government security experts have been called in to analyse the WhatsApp messages at the heart of the Westminster sex scandal. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted, and sources have told GB News more are coming forward. It's after Tory MP William Ragg admitted to The Times he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing phone numbers. Well, joining me now to investigate this story a little bit more is GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Nigel, hello. Thank you very much for joining us on this Saturday afternoon. Nigel, this is an interesting story and the reaction around it has been curious. I think you share my thoughts on it. It's like no one's really, making a lot out of it considering we're so close to an election.
No, that's right. And I was a bit surprised at the lack of reaction from both Labour and the Liberal Democrats. But I think that the reason for that is that they've either been told or they've surmised that at the moment the main thing to sort out is who's behind this. Are we talking about Russia, China, Iran? Or are we talking about criminal blackmailers? Certainly, it's the kind of thing that comes straight out of the Russian playbook. Their foreign policy is to do anything to destabilise Western institutions, to sow mistrust in governments, and this is the kind of thing that they would certainly do.
Well, this is the thing, Nigel, right? OK, this is the honey trap. It's been with us since the dawn of time. Normally fairly stupid men, it has to be said, falling for sexy women leading them on. In this case, it happens to be a young man. But it's like, Mata Hari, the Profumo scandal. It's been around. Why are MPs not hyper-aware, more than most of us would be, that this is potential?
Yeah, that's something that's always surprised me, that it used to be tabloid newspapers that MPs would have to worry about, and now it's social media and apps. I'm sure, like me, you've sat through many interviews with people who've had clandestine affairs with a high-profile MP or cabinet minister, and every time I've done so, I've sort of thought, how do the politicians fall for it? Why didn't they see this one coming? And I think that often it's to do with the arrogance of power. They think that they are too important to be brought down. But I mean, obviously, what MPs should do is if you are doing something in your private life that you don't want to be known publicly, you are at risk. The exception probably is Boris Johnson, who almost made a virtue of having affairs. But the thing about Boris was, Boris didn't seem to mind being caught. So in a sense, it was out there. If you're doing something that you want to keep secret and you're high profile, the best advice is just don't.
Well, quite, and lots and lots of our viewers are getting in touch. This is a subject we really, really care about, and it's like, you know, sort of like people saying like anything, you know, anyone else in another business would be sacked. Certainly, not so much for the sending, you know, naked pictures of yourself. I mean, I get that's a modern day thing, Nigel, evidently. I get that, but it's the fact that you know, data privacy, you're leaking your colleagues, and in particular, young advisors, details to someone you have no idea who they are.
No, that's right. And obviously that's what the police are looking into at the moment. I think in the particular case of William Bragg that there is a lot of sympathy for him at Westminster for getting into this mess. But obviously that the colleagues will feel betrayed by this. And so it rather depends on what more there is to come out about what happens next. At the moment, I think that everyone's giving William Bragg the benefit of the doubt. That could change later on. But of course, we know of about a dozen incidents of this. The suspicion is there are an awful lot more out there.
Nigel, do you think, I mean, just quickly running out of time, unfortunately, do you think people in Westminster are being sympathetic for now and keeping their powder dry because they don't know what else is coming out? There, but for the grace of God.
I do think this story, there's an awful lot more to this story that is yet to come out. So, no, I don't think they're actually trying to keep powder dry. I think there is this genuine kind of sympathy for the situation that William Bragg has found himself in. But what we need to know is who is behind this? Yes. Why did it happen? It's certainly an awful lot more serious than a few pranksters having a bit of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that you're right there. Nigel, thank you very much. That's Nigel Nelson, our senior political correspondent there. Now, really, really got your imagination, this story. Lots of you have been sending in your thoughts. Thankfully, not your picks, just your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.com there if you want to get involved in the conversation as well. But a lot of people are thinking the same as me. It's like, this is from Sue. Hi, Sue. She says, I do not believe that women send explicit photos of themselves. Women know better. They know that an ex could send pictures to anyone, and that is why laws were introduced on revenge porn. I would never respond to a text from someone I didn't know, and this is the whole point. No idea who these people are, madam. Women are smart about such things, as we know how nasty men can get when they are dumped. Now, look, I completely agree with you, Sue, on that. I mean, women do send pictures of themselves, and that's why, indeed, we have revenge porn laws brought in. But my problem with this is William Bragg is in a position of power. That's the problem. It's not like you or I, Joe Blogg's going about our day. He must be aware we've had this system going on for decades now, that the honey trap exists and that they are liable to blackmail, and it's very dangerous territory. That's my problem with it. Why are they doing it? Are they really that stupid? Which is worrying because they are, in theory, running the country. Any case, for all that and much more analysis on that story, just go to our website, gbnews.com. You can see it there on your screen. Now, the other big story, isn't it? Yes, strikes. Rail passengers are facing even more travel chaos as train drivers have decided to continue striking over their long-running pay dispute. And we are talking long-running. Members of ASLEF at 6 companies have walked out, leaving some areas with no services all day. But should train drivers take a leaf out of senior doctor's book and sort this out now? NHS consultants in England this week accepted a pay offer to end a year-long dispute and strike action. The British Medical Association put an offer on pay and conditions to its members, and 83% voted in favour. So why aren't the train drivers doing this? Let's discuss. And they're not the only ones going on strike either, there's more. Joining me now is the host of the Saturday 5, Albie Amacona, and former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. Thank you so much for joining me on a Saturday afternoon. Really appreciate your time. Now, we are talking strikes, so the consultants have settled. Hurrah! Thankfully, NHS crisis over. Kidding, folks, it's not. Junior doctors are, again, likely to go out on strike. We know that. They've got a mandate to go on strike until September. Train drivers are out on strike again. And only this morning, I think we have civil servants from the National Statistics Office going on strike over working from home plans. Hey, let's all go on strike. Not us, obviously, we're staying here. What do we make of this? I mean, Albie, can we just stop going on strike and sort this out?
Well, first of all, Dawn, let's talk about the good news, which, of course, is that the British Medical Association has accepted a pay deal, finally, that the government has offered them, and that should really help people who have been waiting for far too long on those waiting lists. One of the big things which has stopped Rishi Sunak from meeting his pledge of bringing down hospital NHS waiting lists has indeed been the fact that NHS doctors have been on strike for such a long time. So that is good news. There is also bad news. There are train strikes which are happening. And I've actually been using the trains quite a lot recently. I went to go and travel to the Cotswolds a few weeks ago. I went up to Yorkshire and Lancashire last weekend to go and visit my grandma over Easter. And even when the trains are running, they're all full. So they're even worse when the drivers are on strike. And there is fundamentally, I think, something wrong with the way that we do rail transport in this country. There is no other country in Europe that has this privatised system where you have tens of millions of pounds being paid out to shareholders in dividends at the same time as the infrastructure is falling apart and the drivers don't feel like they're being paid well enough. Something needs to change.
Something does need to give. It's the 9th time most drivers have walked out in the past 12 months, despite being paid an average salary of £60,000. And only driving, on average, again, only half the days of the year because of the way their rotas work. Scarlett, to a lot of people, that's a fairly cushy job.
Yeah, but actually, what you have to understand is that going on strike isn't easy. So first of all, I mean, there are government regulations that you have to first do a consultative ballot to see whether it's there. Then you have to get a large percentage of people who want to go on strike. This isn't about, you know, a few people who are sort of pissed off, angry. This is about people who actually feel that they're just not being paid well enough. Now, you might say it's a cushy job. They don't feel it's a cushy job. It's a highly skilled job, as we know, because the train drivers go. But the other thing is the thing about strikes is you lose money. I mean, people who go on strike are angry. They're more than anything else because it's very, very... I mean, it'll take a year for them to get anything back, whatever the pay rise is. So there's something really wrong. I mean, actually, Albie's right. There is something really wrong with the railway. I mean, I do travel on... I love trains, right?
I love trains.
I used to love trains, but then my last few long-distance journeys have been so bad that now I don't like getting the train anymore. I got on a train from London to the Cotswolds and it was standing full the entire way. It was like being on a tube on a long-distance train. Yeah. Appalling.
Well, why do they sell twice as many tickets as they've actually got seats for? I mean, that's just a simple thing, isn't it?
I mean...
Yeah, but the thing is that the way the British system is done, I mean, the way privatisation was done was dreadful. So they cut it all up. So if you want to go to Milton Keynes from Euston, there are 2 train companies that do it. Yeah, you can't just take the first train. You have to take the right train. It's either Virgin or something else. I mean, the whole thing is mad, and actually they're so bad that things like the North East Line, I mean, have been taken back into... I mean, they have been basically renationalised, but it's not called that. And so clearly, and then we had the railway workers coming out, and clearly there is something wrong. And so where are the strikes happening? They're happening in places that are very, very unhappy. And that's what we have to remember. I mean, the consultants strike, amazing. I mean, consultants, they don't go into work to go on strike, right? I have a cancer consultant, and she said to me, she's wonderful, she said, I'm on my knees. I just can't... I mean, you know, I'm sure she was paid well, and she just said, we just cannot go on.
But Scarlett, I think there will be a lot of people watching and listening who also feel that they're quite hard done by in their private sector job, and they are not able to go on strike, and they'll be feeling very frustrated hearing that train drivers earning £60,000 a year with quite cushy pensions and other benefits, and then consultants, when they were on strike, being paid a lot as well and having a very gold-plated pension. they will feel, well, I can't go on strike. Why can these people go on strike?
Because they're organised. I mean, the truth is that if you're in a union, you get better pay and conditions. It's really, really simple. And if you look at somewhere like Amazon, right, where the unions are trying to organise, not to get them out on strike, but actually so there's reasonable. I mean, Amazon is a terrible employer, so there's reasonable thing, and they won't let the unions in. I mean, there's no question. I mean, I am in a union, the National Union of Journalists, and the National Union of Journalists makes sure that journalists are properly paid. Otherwise, they wouldn't be.
Well, some. I mean, but the thing is with this, do we think there's a political angle here, right? The consultants have settled, and as you said, Albie, great news. Junior doctors have got a mandate. They can carry on striking until basically the next general election, which is quite suspicious timing, some would say. Many of the rail strikes have been settled as well. It is just the ASLEF union, isn't it, that are going out on strike now still again. And now we have our, who is it, the Office for National Statistics, some of their staff, civil servants, you pay their wages, have voted to go out on strike. Protesters have been told they must go back into the office for a whole 2 days a week. I don't know how they cope. But do you think there's a political thing behind all of these strikes? Do you think, say the junior doctors, who have been offered quite a good deal, haven't they, 10%, do you think they would be going back into work if there was a Labour government now?
I think that is a very interesting point, Dawn. And I think the key word when we talk about junior doctors is junior. How old are junior doctors? We're kind of talking about people under the age of 35 here. How well do people under the age of 35 poll with the Conservative Party? It's single digits, Dawn. Low single digits. They've got a reason for that. The Tories have not been good for young people. I will say that as a young Tory. But I will say that I think there's absolutely a chance that the junior doctors will be striking in a way which is going to be as harmful as possible to Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives in power at the moment to ensure that there's a Labour government after the next general election.
What do you make? Except, so I mean, I have had 2 of my nephews go out with trainee doctors, not even junior. These people have trained for years and years and years, paying lots of money, can I say, to go to university to get them. They are not doing it for political reasons. I mean, they're doing it because they want to. And the problem with junior doctors is we're losing them. And we're losing them to Australia and we're losing them to Canada. And actually, what we need to do is we need to value them. And the real problem is...
Or do we need an Australian or a Canadian-style healthcare system?
I'm not... The problem is...
They don't have an NHS there. They have a social insurance model with private sector involvement.
And Germany does the same.
But the problem is not our system. The problem is how we treat people. And they really do feel badly treated. And that's the problem with the junior doctors. And then when you have the Secretary of State for Health saying, well, I'm not even going to meet you until things... I mean, what you need to do... They've cost more money than if we had given them the pay, right? We know it's all about ideology. So what we need to do is we need to say, we need you, we respect you, and we want you to come back to work. And that's what we've got to do. I mean, we've got to get people back to work so that we can get the waiting lists down.
Well, yes, indeed. What do you think? Do you agree with Scarlett or do you agree with Albie? Interesting one, isn't it? Lots of people out on strike. In any case, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Saturday, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. Millions will receive a boost in take-home pay today following a cut to national insurance. Or will they? What does that actually mean to the pennies in your pocket? All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Is it OK to call people fat? I won't call Bev fat because she isn't. She won't call me fat because I'm not. But the fitness fanatic, Derek Evans, you might know him better as 90s icon Mr Motivator, recently told a podcast diabetes have gone through the roof. You should be able to call people fat.
Well, he joins us now. Good morning, Derek. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to see you. So I think what you're getting at is this idea that we've become so polite about weight that we're ignoring the elephant in the room. If you'll forgive the phraseology there, and actually sometimes you've got to be cruel to be kind.
Well, actually, this has been taken out of all context. I actually didn't say you're entitled to call people fat. What I did say is that in the 80s and 90s, I remember the way I got into television, there was a gentleman walking at reception while I was waiting for the people I was training. And for some reason, I got up and I prodded him in the belly. And I said to him, you need to deal with that. That was fat. We have a nation where obesity, diabetes is killing every one of us. And unless we take responsibility for our health, rather than waiting for government to do this, government to do that, it is our responsibility, right, to look after our independence and our health. And as we get older, it's even more critical, right? And that's why I'm here as an example saying to you, listen, I'm 71 years of age and movement is medicine. And you can't sit around watching television and not going out to the gym or wherever. You will never, ever be able to look after your family and everything you've worked for. You will lose it. I've never seen a deposit account behind a hearse. No matter what you work for, the most important thing you can do with your life is every hour, do something active. Every hour.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to GB News. I'm Dawn Neeson and this is GB News on your tellies, online and on digital radio. If you're wondering what I'm giggling about, I'm sitting on the sofa, just in case you hadn't noticed, and I was wondering how to arrange my legs. Answers on a postcode, but you don't have to send pictures. I've had enough of those. Right, now, let's talk about money, shall we? Now, millions of people receive a boost in take-home pay today following a cut to employee national insurance. From the start of the new tax year, that's the 1st of April, Class 1 contributions will be reduced from 10 to 8%. Meanwhile, a further 2 million self-employed people will see their Class 4 national insurance reduced from 8 to 6%. The government says around 29 million workers will benefit from the changes. But Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says taxes are actually going up. This is what she had to say yesterday.
While they say tomorrow that taxes are going down, all of the numbers show that taxes are on the rise. Taxes today are at a 70-year high, and they're due to increase in every single year of the forecast period. In fact, by the end of the forecast, the average British family would be paying £870 more in tax because of the frozen national insurance and income tax threshold, and because of increases in council tax too. That is the Conservatives' double whammy on tax.
Now, it's very easy to criticise when you're in opposition, because that's all you've got to do, say, that's a really bad idea, we'd do something much better, we're not going to tell you what until you vote for us. So to explain what exactly is going on and to make it all crisp and sexy and full of impact is the lovely economist, I can't even say it right, economist even, see, I'm rubbish with money, and co-founder of investment advisor regionally, Justin Urquhart-Stewart. Justin, thank you very much for joining me. Now,
perhaps I'm a columnist now rather than an economist.
Oh, well, you can be whatever you want, love. You can identify these days as, you know, anything.
Back as a cat again.
Yeah, just don't send any more pictures. But the thing is with this, right, I said you're going to make it crisp and sexy and full of impact. I don't really do money. I'm not very good at it. But even I can work out that the national insurance cut has really been taken away by the fact that the tax bands have been frozen. So I actually am probably worse off. Rachel Reeves had a point.
Yep. Well, she did point indeed, because actually what's happened, they've been doing this issue with obviously your annual allowance you're given, and that's supposed to go up with inflation.
Yeah.
But of course, if it doesn't go up, effectively that means you're pulling more people into taxation. So we'll do the calculation then for national insurance for them, and they're worse off. Now, there are some people who are better off.
Oh.
But what you've got, though...
Tory MPs?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're the ones earning most of the money. But really what they need to think about is actually try to make tax interesting, simpler, you understand it. Or even, as the Romans used to do, to encourage you to pay your taxes, I'll tell you what, we'll put a statue up for you over there. And so start making it positive. Now, think about in UK terms, you're never going to make it that fascinating. What we can do is say, right, if you're going to contribute X, Y, and Z into this part, we will give you a percentage off your inheritance tax, or whatever particular one you want to pick. You can simplify the process and make taxation being positive, not a negative. So people say, I understand what I'm getting for this. Actually, I'm paying more tax, but I'm getting a discount further down the line as I get older.
Do they think we're stupid? My problem with this, right, is they really do think we're stupid, don't they?
Well, they do it in a language which we don't actually understand. My own sad world as a failed barrister, well, you either have to speak Latin, everyone else gets dull. Your financial services, well, no one understands their technical terms they're coming out with. And then you've got the accountants. Well, heaven's sake, it is what you need to do. And here is a campaign for GB News, which is rewrite the tax system.
OK.
Because you've got national insurance and income tax, so people get confused as to they're virtually the same. They're a tax on your income.
Well, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I just about grasped that.
And then you've got the sales tax as well. But by the time you've done VAT and you've done income and national insurance, that's most of the taxation. Income coming through. OK, after that comes corporation, but even that's not as high as the others. So what you've got is these big ones, VAT, national insurance, are then coming through, and the rest of it is almost sin taxes. Booze, fags, car things.
Fun stuff.
Oh,
not all of that is fun, by the way.
But what they could do...
Bad for you.
They could simplify it and rationalise it, so, A, we understand what's going on, and really then giving a positive feel, this is particularly for the government, actually, it's not X amount off national insurance, because there's nothing tangible for me. And over a space of a year, it's a few hundred quid. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
What they need to do is actually create something which has got more interest, some greater sexiness to it, such as we're going to make this tax system actually simpler and something you can understand. For those years back, which you won't remember, obviously they got when they brought in the huge reduction in income tax coming down to 40%.
Yes,
40%. We were all used to sort of 70 or 80%. That got people going, and so now I'm going to be in a position where I don't mind the tax system so much because you've restructured it all. I understand it, and I feel I'm getting my money's worth.
Well, it's fiddling around the edges, isn't it? I mean, and hilariously, all the latest polls are saying that Labour now are more trusted on not only taxes but immigration than the Conservatives, who are supposedly tough on both of these things.
And that's the real problem here. None of them have made it interesting enough. So the Tories are infighting amongst themselves, and the rest is going, what do you want about? So the Labour don't have to do very much to look good, because the Tories are doing that for them anyway.
Well, this is all Labour have got to do is land now. That's a bit rubbish. We've got a better idea, but we're just not telling you about it just yet. Well, you've just rearranged the tax system perfectly well there, Justin Urquhart, who is an economist. See, I can say it. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
For me, Justin. Thank you. Well, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Saturday, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. But first, it's time for the news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Dawn. 32 minutes past 1, our top stories. The human torso found at a nature reserve in Salford belonged to a man aged older than 40. The murder investigation was launched by Greater Manchester Police after the body part was found wrapped in plastic at Kersal Wetlands. The victim is believed to have been dead for a matter of days. DNA tests are ongoing to identify the man. Power cuts have left thousands without electricity across Ireland as Storm Kathleen brings strong winds. Dozens of flights have also been cancelled due to gusts of up to 70 miles an hour in Northern Ireland and the west of Britain. Around 70 flights have been called off so far. The yellow weather warning for wind is in effect until 10 p.m. and covers Cornwall, much of Wales, parts of Lancashire and Cumbria, up into central Scotland and, of course, Northern Ireland too. Rail passengers are facing fresh travel chaos as train drivers continue striking in a long-running pay dispute. Members of ASLEF at 6 companies have walked out, leaving some areas with no services all day. Chiltern, TransPennine Express and Northern will not be running any trains, while there will be reduced services on Great Western, LNER and Heathrow Express. Meanwhile, engineering work means there'll be no trains between London Paddington and Reading. And a Conservative MP says he was the first whistleblower to alert police to the parliamentary honey trap sexting scam. Bosworth MP Dr Luke Evans says he was the victim of cyber flashing as the Met launched its investigation into unsolicited messages. On Thursday, Tory MP William Ragg told The Times that he'd sent intimate snaps of himself to someone on a gay dating app, and he was then manipulated into providing colleagues' phone numbers. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Ray. Now, remember, you can get in touch about all the stories we're talking about today by email me at gbviews@gbnews.com on your screens now, or message me on our socials. We're at GB News, and there's loads more coming up on a cracking show. Very strong winds of up to 70 miles an hour and heavy snow are battering parts of the UK today as Storm Kathleen causes chaos. Our reporter will be braving the storm just for us to bring us all the latest. All of that and much more to come. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Kathleen is the main talking point today, bringing some very strong winds across the UK. It's situated out to the west at the moment and slowly pushes its way northwards as we go through the rest of Saturday. Those winds will be strongest across western parts of the UK with yellow wind warnings in force. We could see gusts here, particularly for Northern Ireland, Irish Sea coast of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps even up to 70 miles an hour this afternoon, so that could cause some travel disruption. Elsewhere though, it will be a generally dry day, some patchy rain in places, some heavy showers across western parts of Scotland, but highs of 20 or 21 degrees, perhaps even 22 across eastern parts of Anglia, so likely to be the warmest day of the year so far. Through Saturday evening, we see a band of heavy rain pushing up from the southwest, and there could be some hail and thunder mixed in there too, so some local flooding possible. Winds will gradually ease a little, but still remaining breezy overnight and turning a little drier across much of England and Wales into the early hours of the morning. And generally a mild night, temperatures holding up well above freezing across the UK. Sunday starts a little bit drier across England and Wales, but another band of rain pushes its way eastwards through the early morning. It will still be a very breezy day, but the strongest winds on Sunday likely to be across northwestern parts of Scotland. We could see gusts here of 60 to 70 miles an hour, so perhaps some travel disruption in places. There will be plenty of showers around on Sunday, and it will still be a mild day with temperatures above average and highs of 16 or 17 degrees.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Now, let's talk about the weather. We're British, what we do. Very strong winds of up to 70 miles an hour and heavy snow battering parts of the UK today as Storm Kathleen causes chaos. The Met Office says rain, snow and unseasonably strong winds are moving towards the UK and Ireland from the southwest. Yellow weather warnings for snow, wind and rain remain in place until 10 o'clock tonight. Joining me now, well, we hope he's still there, is GB News Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie, who is sent to stand on a... Oh, no, he was on a wave-lashed beach and is now on a rain-lashed river. Anywhere dangerous, Dougie's going to be. Dougie, thank you for joining us again. It's actually starting looking like it's raining where you are now. What's happening?
Yeah, you spoke too soon the last time saying that there was no rain. Of course, it's starting to come in now. We have moved inland a little bit. The wind gusts are high, but actually in amongst that it's not too bad. But if you look at this river behind us, it is very, very, very swollen indeed, and it is fast moving, and that's because the water table has been so high over the whole winter period. That's to do with a lot of different issues, but it means that trees are very susceptible to gusts of wind that will bring down power lines, and that's exactly what's happened this morning in and around Cork, Kerry and Waterford when Storm Kathleen hit that part of Ireland, deep in the south of Ireland. It then has basically split. The most severe gusts have went round Ireland, and about now Galway, Mayo and Donegal are taking massive gusts, and indeed, as you've seen earlier on with ourselves when we were on the coast in the Irish Sea, we were getting very large gusts of wind coming up towards from the bottom of the Isle of Man right on up the Irish Sea, and that is now moving it towards yourselves on the mainland, and you will feel that within the next few hours. But it isn't that bad when you come away from the coast. So that structural damage should basically stay on the coastal areas. Those power lines will come down the coastal areas, and as I said to you before, the crews in Ireland and Scotland, north and south of Ireland, are very used to dealing with this type of weather and are well ready for it. But the worry will be after this commercially, those seaside towns that over the last couple of weeks will have opened their doors to caravan parks, etc. What will be the commercial problems for them after this weekend has gone past with very little trade? And then, of course, we'll be looking at what the water does as it goes in and out of the fields and makes its way onto the roads. There was a lot of rain last night, quite heavy rain indeed. The roads were flooded in places, so if you are travelling throughout Northern Ireland, please be careful on the roads. There's a lot of standing water because the fields are still flooded, and of course the water's not draining away into those shucks and ditches. So that is worth the watching, especially this evening in and around 7 o'clock when the light starts to go. But mainly Northern Ireland has took quite the battering from the wind, but so far so good, and tomorrow we believe it will all be about the northeast or the northwest of England and mainly Scotland.
Dougie, two things. It has the record amount of rainfall in the past 18 months. So it's not my fault, right, by the way. It's raining with you, OK? I know you're trying to blame me, but it's not. But basically, what you're experiencing there is heading our way.
Yes, indeed it is. It heads. So if it comes west, it'll keep on going that direction, west to east, and it's heading towards yourselves now. And I can't tell you, on the coastal areas, it is very, very gusty. I mean, I was talking to you earlier on from the side of a cliff, and I can tell you the gusts there. I mean, myself and my camera operator were finding it very hard to stand there and not get blown away. So they are quite big gusts when they come, and unfortunately for the seaside towns, that will be the damage when it comes.
Right, Dougie, so we've had crashing waves on the edge of a cliff, flooded river with rain-sodden fields. So for the next hit, we want you to go and stand in the middle of a forest with trees, OK? Just to see what that's like for us.
Now I'm going to get an ice cream. I'm going to get an ice cream. That's where I'm going for my next hit.
Doogie BT, thank you so much for joining us from our, Storm Kathleen hitting Ireland at the moment and coming our way. Lucky us, eh? Right, I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News Saturday, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. Today, I can't believe this, I feel old. Today marks the 50th anniversary of when ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest for Sweden and launched one of the most iconic careers in music in the world. But how are the groups celebrating? All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
When I was president of the Durham Union, back in 2016-17, I was hosting a debate, which was the question, this House sees China as a threat to the West. Now, it wasn't saying that that's what we believed. That was a question.
Up for debate.
On one side, we had the former Foreign Secretary, Sir Malcolm Rifkind. On the other side, we invited a woman by the name of Anastasia Lin. Now, she's someone who's been expelled from China for her human rights activism. She's a former Miss World contestant. She was a great speaker. But we started getting loads of complaints into my inbox from Chinese students at Durham University, and they started to say, why are you hosting this debate? Why have you invited Anastasia Lin? She is banned from China. You can't host this woman. You can't host her. You can't have her
Were they copy
in your
and paste
debate.
jobs?
They were all very, very similar. And we were sort of thinking, well, this is a union that is hundreds of years old, founded on the principles of free speech. We're not going to listen because some students are upset. And then it got to the point where I was pulled out of a tutorial that I was in, told to go to the union office and take a phone call from the Chinese embassy. And so I was taking a phone call here from diplomats in the Chinese embassy saying, you have to cancel this debate. You have to cancel this debate.
Crazy.
At one point, they even threatened the UK's trade terms with China. I think they thought that I was perhaps a representative of the British state. I wasn't. I was a student. But I ignored them and I said, no, we're going to host this debate. We hosted the debate. It was a massive success. We heard strong arguments on either side. And frankly...
Do you know what it's a good thing that you were there to make sure that your university and its union upheld the values of Britain and our liberal democracy.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your TV, online and on that there digital radio. Now, my favourite bit of the show, with a wonderful person. Mamma Mia, Waterloo and Dancing Queen are just some of the mega hits released by ABBA. Today marks, oh my God, I can't believe, prepare to feel old, people. Today marks the 50th anniversary of when the Super Troopers won the Eurovision Song Contest for Sweden and launched one of the most iconic careers in music the world has ever seen. Now, joining me now is our very own Dancing Queen, showbiz reporter Stephanie Tachi.
Mamma Mia, Dawn. Mamma Mia, you super trooper.
Let's see how many more we can work in them. Mine's gone completely
One of us
blank.
is very hot right now. Me.
It is very warm in here, it has to be said. Not because Steph has joined me, but she is very hot. So, 50 years since...
50 years.
Waterloo. I mean...
And it's just, it feels like it happened yesterday, but they really did cement history back then in 1974. And today, this weekend, it's a big ABBA extravaganza on TV and also at the Brighton Dome, where they actually won back in 1974. Do you believe that show was only 1 hour and 48 minutes compared to Eurovision's these days, which is almost 3 hours? But
feels like a week.
I know. But tonight, the Dome's going to be open in Brighton for people to perform ABBA tracks, and they're literally going to party like it's 1974. But when we talk about the legacy of ABBA, Dawn, 200 million records sold worldwide, and obviously we have the live show which is still there, and it just goes to show that they didn't even know that they were making that history that night. Do you know, on that night they weren't actually going to perform Waterloo? There was another track that they wanted to perform, but Waterloo got picked in the end.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And that they've sold over 150 million records. They were only together for 9 years.
Yes, there was, but you know what I think it is? I don't even consider ABBA as pop. I put them in their own league because they're hard to imitate. And even back then in 1974, I don't think I could compare them to other acts that were around at the time. You know, a Scandinavian four-piece, you know, wearing the satin outfits they wore that night. It was just, it's never been seen, and it's hard to replicate even today. But they did have the magic touch when it comes to music, and I think that's what makes them still relevant.
They were unique, and it's timeless as well. You can still sing a lot. Well, we still are, aren't we? We've got sort of like Mamma Mia musical, made billions. The film, 185 million. And then we've got the Avatars and Avatar Voyage. I mean, there is nothing.
They span so many generations, Dawn. That's the thing. You know, you could have grown up in the 70s and loved ABBA. I got into ABBA in the 00s when I was just about 15, and I loved them. And just good music lasts the test of time.
It does.
But on TV tonight, there will be some ABBA things. Tomorrow on BBC Two, they will be replaying the actual Eurovision when they won in 1978. On tonight on BBC, it's all going to be ABBA. It's going to be a documentary looking at ABBA between 1974 and 1982, all the times they visited Britain. So
brilliant. So you can have a proper ABBA night.
Fest
you can
tonight.
Even dress up if you wanted to.
I've got my flares ready.
Have you? but do you know this fact? You know the Spanish onesies they wear, right? They were always in shades of blue, purple and white. Do you know why?
Why?
Do you know why? Designed to represent a Scandi theme of ice mountains and a glacial river.
Oh, that's lovely.
I mean,
lovely.
Lovely.
And, you know, I do think, Dawn, I think they're going to do something special for the Eurovision, which will be taking place in May, because it's going to be taking Malmö in Sweden. So I do think they might bring the original group out for it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
They're all in their 70s now, but very with it still. Now, obviously, their personal relationships in ABBA weren't that great, were they? They ended up getting divorced. Talking of which, we've seen another high-profile announcement of a divorce coming up with Sacha Baron Cohen and Isla Fisher.
Yeah, we didn't see that coming, to be honest. I know he's had a bit of controversy recently due to the Rebel Wilson memoir that she's put out, where she said that she was mistreated by him, allegedly, on the set of their film, The Brothers Grimsby. But Isla Fisher and Sacha Cohen, by Hollywood standards, Dawn, we thought they were quite rock solid. They've been together for 2 decades, but Isla Fisher put it out last night on Instagram that they quietly divorced last year. She says, obviously, they're still a family and they're still, you know, very much in love as parents of their children. The reason why I think Isla Fisher's come out with this, what sources say, Dawn, is because obviously he's had a lot of controversy with his own career. She wants to relaunch her acting career, so I think she's trying to separate that and separate any embarrassment. But I think behind the closed doors, I think personally they had moved to Australia as a family in 2020. She's Australian, and apparently he found it really hard making that adjustment to Australia because he was leaving everything he knows behind. But I guess with all this controversy at the moment, I think she's just done the right thing and said, you know what, we're not together. Because it's very easy, you know, once you put his name up, her name will come up as well.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And you're dragged into whatever is going on.
You really are.
With all of that. But, I mean, they announced it in a weird way. To be fair, it's in all the papers, right? Not just the tabloids, it's on the front page of the serious newspapers as well. But I was genuinely shocked, as you say, because, you know, that length of relationship in Hollywood is like, wow.
It's like dinosaur years.
Literally dinosaur years. But they announced it with a tennis picture. It sort of
they did.
Our love match is over.
Dawn, they've been quite a very private couple, but as well, they are quite an amusing couple over the years. You always see them when they're on red carpets, making quite animated appearances.
Yes.
He's a comedian. She's quite light-hearted. She's quite funny. And I think, you know what, when it comes to these divorce announcements and celebrityhood, it's always like, oh, we love each other dearly. And, you know, when I get those kind of statements, I read beyond the words. But I think for them, genuinely, there is still love there. And actually, they've bowed out in their relationship, their marriage, in a fun way.
Well, it's what you expect. And one quick story, Steph, I think we've got time for Netflix.
The Disney
Plus streaming.
Yes.
Doing the same as Netflix.
Yeah.
Netflix already done it, haven't they?
Dawn, usually sharing is caring, but not for Disney anymore because they're saying they're cracking down on password sharing. So you can share with people in your own household, but outside your household now, you're going to have to pay an additional fee. I don't know what the technology they're going to use because I'm saying where there's a will, there's a way, people will find. But the head boss of Disney, Bob Iger, he's very serious about Disney Plus making a profit this year. Netflix, when they cracked down on password sharing, they managed to get 13 million subscribers. Wow. So if Disney wants to do that, they're going to have to crack down on password sharing and people are just going to have to cough up the cash. Right now, it's $4.99 a month with ads. Minus ads, it's $7.99. So let's see what happens next.
Yeah. Stephanie, thank you very much for joining us. Right, this is Dawn Needham on GB News Saturday. Loads more coming up. But first, let's have a look at what the weather's doing.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Kathleen is still very much the talking point of our weather over the next day or so. Situated out to the west of the UK, it's going to bring us some very strong winds through the rest of Saturday and into the start of Sunday. Those strongest winds likely across western parts of the UK, Northern Ireland and Scotland, perhaps seeing gusts of 60 to 70 miles an hour through the rest of the evening. But it's through Saturday evening, a band of showers pushes its way north and eastwards. These likely to turn very heavy with some hail and thunder mixed in for southwestern parts of the UK. It will gradually turn drier for much of the UK through the early hours of Sunday morning, and it'll be a mild start to Sunday as well, with temperatures generally holding up in the high single figures. So after a brief drier start across the UK, another band of showers pushes its way north and eastwards through Sunday morning, again turning quite heavy in places, perhaps some localised flooding and travel disruption. Still a widely windy day on Sunday, the strongest winds though across northwestern parts of Scotland. Again, there could be gusts here of 60 to 70 miles an hour, so there could be some travel disruption through the afternoon. Another mild day across the UK, but temperatures down a touch on Saturday, maybe 16 or 17 degrees in the south, but still above average. Monday starts dry for Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, but further south, another band of rain pushes up from the southwest through Monday morning, so turning very wet and windy across these parts through Monday afternoon. Remaining unsettled through the first part of next week, temperatures still remaining a little bit above average, but hints of something drier through the second half of the week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Loads more coming up on today's show. Security experts have been called in to analyse the WhatsApp messages left at the heart of the Westminster sex scandal. The latest on all that still to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far.
With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
And this report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Hello, welcome back to GB News Saturday. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend. I'm Dawn Neeson, and for the next cracking hour, I'll be keeping you company on telly, online and on digital radio, keeping you up to date on the stories that really matter to you. Coming up in this hour, government security experts have been called in to analyse the WhatsApp messages at the heart of the Westminster sex scandal, with William Ragg, the chairman of a Common Select Committee, no less, handing over the personal phone numbers of colleagues to a man he met on a gay dating app. Then very strong winds of up to 70 miles an hour and heavy snow battering parts of the UK today as Storm Kathleen causes chaos. The Met Office says rain, snow and unseasonably strong winds are moving towards the UK and Ireland from the southwest. Batten down that garden furniture, folks. And after being told that the 100 millilitre hand luggage rules, yes, in airports was going to be scrapped, why on earth are we being told the rule is here to stay? Oh, boo. Hey, but this show is nothing without you and your views. It's about you, not me or anyone else here for that matter. Let me know what you're thinking, all the stories we're talking about today, or just anything you have a gossip about. It's a weekend, isn't it, after all? Email me at gbviews@gbnews.com or message me on our socials. We're at GB News. But first, it's Ray Addison time with the headlines.
Thanks, Dawn. 2 minutes past 1, our top stories. Power cuts have left thousands without electricity across Ireland as Storm Kathleen brings strong winds. Dozens of flights have also been cancelled due to gusts of up to 70 miles per hour in Northern Ireland and the west of Britain. Around 70 flights have been called off so far. A yellow weather warning for wind is in effect until 10 p.m. tonight. It covers Cornwall, much of Wales, parts of Lancashire and Cumbria, up into central Scotland and, of course, Northern Ireland too. Our Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie is in County Down.
It hit Cork, Waterford and Kerry. There it has done some structural damage and power outages. The storm has now basically surrounded the coastal areas of the island of Ireland. It is now making its way towards Galway, Mayo and Donegal, and it has come up the Irish Sea into the east coast here, and I'm standing in Northern Ireland about 25 miles away from the Isle of Man, and the winds are picking up. The gusts of the winds are the most damaging part here, and we'll expect many more flights to be cancelled over the next few hours.
Rail passengers are facing fresh travel chaos as train drivers continue striking in a long-running pay dispute. Members of ASLEF at 6 companies have walked out, leaving some areas with no services all day long. Chiltern, TransPennine Express and Northern not running any trains, while there'll be reduced services on Great Western, LNER and Heathrow Express. Engineering work means there'll be no trains as well between London, Paddington and Reading. The human torso found at a nature reserve in Salford belonged to a man aged older than 40. Police say a murder investigation was launched by Greater Manchester Police after the body part was found wrapped in plastic at Kersal Wetlands. The victim is believed to have been dead for a matter of days. DNA tests are ongoing to identify the man. Climate activist Greta Thunberg has been detained by Dutch police during a demonstration in The Hague. Thunberg was put into a large bus by officers, along with other protesters who tried to block a major highway into the administrative capital of the Netherlands. The 21-year-old was campaigning against the Dutch government, calling for a stop to subsidies for fossil fuels. A Conservative MP says he was the first whistleblower to alert police to the parliamentary honey trap sexting scam. Bosworth MP Dr Luke Evans says he was the victim of cyber flashing as the Met launched an investigation into unsolicited messages. On Thursday, Tory MP William Ragg told The Times that he'd sent intimate snaps of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing colleagues' phone numbers. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted.
The first set of messages I got was on a day I was with my wife, and I got a one-time open photo on WhatsApp of an explicit image of a naked lady. As soon as I got these, the next day I reported it to the police, the authorities and the chief whip. 10 days later, I got another set of messages. This time, however, I was sat with my team in the constituency office, so we were able to record the conversation and catch photos and videos of the messages coming through, including another explicit female image. I put my name up to say, well, I hope others come forward. I'm just pleased I blew the whistle, reported it to the authorities, and it's now being looked into.
Nearly £17 million worth of drugs has been seized by the Royal Navy after it intercepted smuggling speedboats in the Caribbean Sea. Across two operations, HMS Trent seized 200 kilos of cocaine following a port visit to the island of Martinique. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says it shows the Navy's commitment to disrupt and dismantle drug traffickers. So-called reckless Tory tax pledges will leave home buyers worse off, Labour is warning. The party says the Conservatives' ambition to scrap national insurance contributions will create a £46 billion black hole. Their analysis suggests that first home buyers could be £280 worse off each year due to an increase in mortgage repayments. Shadow Minister Alison McGovern told us the policy will harm couples.
It's hardly fair to put at risk that position that people are in when they're trying to buy their first home, when they're really saving and making these sorts of unfunded tax commitments has that effect. It's worse for people who are in that position who struggle to be able to buy their own home.
Well, for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts. You'll get them to your phone by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, back to Dawn and GB News Saturday.
Thank you very much, Faye. I love the way it says Dawn. It's got quite a ring to it, hasn't it? Right, OK, let's get straight into today's story, shall we? The latest opinion poll for GB News from People Polling shows a majority want to know the level of crime being committed by asylum seekers and illegal migrants. 53% believe the government should provide that data. Just 18% say they shouldn't. The poll also has more dire news for the Conservatives, with 45% of people saying they intended to vote for Labour. The Conservatives are on just 19%, only 5 points ahead of Reform, who are on 14%, with the Lib Dems on 9% and the Greens on 8%. When asked who they trust to stop the small boat crossings, twice as many people, this is weird, backed Labour. 15% say they trust Labour to stop the boats compared to just 7% for the Conservatives. Blimey. But by far the most people said they trust neither. 55% of you. And when asked whether the UK should leave the European Convention on Human Rights if ECHR judges block more Rwanda flights, 36% said yes, we should. 31%, it's quite close, isn't it, said no, we shouldn't. Right, some very interesting results in this poll. So joining me now is GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson to analyse what they actually mean. Nigel, hello, thank you very much for joining us again. Nigel, some very interesting results in this poll, isn't it? Basically, no one trusts either main party at the moment.
No, that seems to be what's coming out. I mean, if you extrapolate those figures into seats after a general election, you end up with the Tories only having 32 MPs left. Now, that would give Labour a majority of 388. This is from the voting analyst electoral calculus. And the Lib Dems would become the official opposition on 48 MPs. Although Reform are doing an awful lot better than the Lib Dems, because of our first past the post system, they still wouldn't get any MPs.
The problem is, Nigel, no matter where you are politically, this isn't good news for democracy as such, because if you've got one party having such a huge majority, they've really got no opposition. They can basically do what they want.
Yeah, and I think that worries me too. I don't think any party should have such a huge majority. What you need is an effective opposition to scrutinise legislation that's coming through, to point out where it's going wrong. And what you don't want is massive majorities just railroading things through. I quite like the old coalition that happened between the Tories and the Lib Dems back in 2010. What the Lib Dems did is stop the Tories doing things that would be a bit extreme. So, yes, I think that the good news is the polls probably will close between now and the general election. That means the Tories won't be on the sort of rump of 32 seats, and we'll probably have a lot more. But at the moment, every single poll is showing a Labour landslide.
It must be. I mean, can you imagine, Nigel, waking up in the morning and being Rishi Sunak? I mean, not only have you got people commentating on your footwear and the length of your trousers, as happens, but also there is no good news. Every single poll, not just the GB News one, but every single poll that you're getting at the moment has basically the Tories are doomed. Interestingly, no matter what they actually do.
Yes, I mean, nothing seems to be working for Rishi Sunak, and I'm sure that when he has a look at our poll, he'll be holding his head in his hands in despair. I mean, we've just got the national insurance cut, which is coming in today. But again, we had one back in November. People will get £900 better off as a result of these two cuts, but that hasn't worked. And largely is because the cost of living crisis still is the top issue for voters, followed by the NHS waiting lists. And Rishi Sunak is not doing anything to actually alleviate either.
Well, quite. There was one interesting thing on the Labour side of things here. You know, no matter what poll, they've all got Labour with a huge majority. But it's an interesting one today. I think it was in the Times or Telegraph, can't remember which now, saying that Labour are winning in swing seats where some of the areas where they are very traditionally Labour are actually losing some votes there. What do you think is happening there?
Well, I mean, once you start going down into a constituency level, the picture looks rather different. So the kind of polls that have been done, which is showing what is happening in constituencies, put the Tories on a far higher margin. Not high enough, and you're still talking about a Labour landslide. But yes, I mean, I think that Labour have various problems around the country, not least the whole Palestinian conflict has not helped them in some of the marginals where you've got a big Muslim vote.
What do you think? I mean, is there anything the Conservatives could do now to actually win the next election?
Well, I mean, you never say never. Anything could happen. Labour could possibly implode between now and election day. But it does seem that there's nothing that the Tories seem to be doing at the moment that is making any difference. Obviously, it would help a bit if they were able to get a flight off to Rwanda. It wouldn't do anything to stop the boats, but it is symbolic. And it was one of the promises Rishi Sunak made to get that done by spring.
Do you think, interestingly, though, you mentioned the migration issue, which you assume everybody is really worried about, which many people are. But what I think came out in the GB News poll was how worried about the economy people were as well. And that could be the bigger vote winner rather than actually sorting the migration crisis out.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, migration and the boats come as sort of the number 3 issue for people, but certainly the economy is the number 1, because it's what is happening in people's pockets. The only thing that Rishi Sunak could do is to make people feel better by the time the election comes round in October or November, and that is what he's not doing. One of the biggest problems is the tax thresholds being frozen. That has sort of put a fiscal dragnet on people. What it means is the tax cuts he has made to national insurance, that's worth £1 in people's pockets, but he's taking another £1.90 in this fiscal drag. So that's where his problem lies. He's got to be able to turn that around. He hasn't got much time to do it in.
No, and the other story that caught my eye briefly, Nigel, was that Downing Street have been accused of blocking true blue Conservatives and more right-wing candidates from standing in the general election as it wages a battle for the future. So what the story seems to be implying is that Rishi Sunak wants more centrist people standing for election. So when they lose, if he's still leader, he will have more support than having right-wing members standing for a local election, for the elections.
Yeah, what he's actually doing is thinking about the future in opposition. And clearly that what the Tory party want is more centrist MPs in opposition to challenge Labour. So that makes sense. As far as his own future goes, if he loses the election, he won't be Prime Minister and he won't be leader of the Tory party. There's no way he could actually struggle on the basis that he became Prime Minister without one single vote being cast.
Well, indeed. Well, as I said, I wouldn't want to wake up being Rishi Sunak, would you? Nigel Nelson, thank you very much for your time and for explaining the myriad of polls we've got on the political situation, which isn't good for anyone, basically, by the sounds of it. Now, for all the best analysis and opinion on that and much more, go to our website, gbnews.com. See it on the screen there. Now, we move on. Very strong winds of up to 70 miles an hour and heavy snow battering parts of the UK today as Storm Kathleen causes chaos. The Met Office says rain, snow and unseasonably strong winds are moving towards the UK and Ireland from the southwest. Yellow weather warnings remain in place until 10 o'clock this evening. Joining me now, I love talking to Doogie, is GB News Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie, who is... excellent, standing near some trees with gusts of 60 miles an hour heading your way. Doogie, and it's raining. Excellent. How's it looking there, Doogie?
Well, it never ceases to amaze me, actually, how nature resets itself. And from the very high gusts earlier on today, I'm standing actually looking at the mountains of Mourne, just behind the camera here, blue skies coming over it. The mist is starting to clear from the mountains and the winds have died right down. So this beautiful seaside town of Newcastle in County Down has either in the eye of the storm or it has seen the last of the storm, because the birds are flying quite high again in the sky. You can see the seagulls coming back in again. But of course now comes the clean-up operation, and we're starting to get emails in of the Portaferry Road up to Newton Ards is now closed due to flooding. That's a coastal road. That means the sea has come up over the top of the wall into the road. There's trees down on the Cumber Road to Killylea, also a very open and coastal road. So the damage initially does seem to be in and around those coastal areas on the east coast of Northern Ireland. As for the Republic of Ireland, well, Storm Kathleen landed there this morning in Cork, Kerry and Waterford. It did do damage there. Thousands were left without power. It has then moved its way up past Galway into Mayo and up in round the top end of Donegal. And that is a very open part of land to the Atlantic, and is very, very common to have big storms there. So the electricity services there will be very quick in getting those trees cleared, the lines back up again, and pretty much we are now seeing the quiet of the storm as it moves across the Irish Sea towards yourselves.
Thanks very much, Doogie from Ireland with love indeed. Doogie, what's the forecast like for the rest of the week where you are? Is it going to get better?
Well, we would have rather had wind than rain, it must be said. We have had a horrendous time of rain over the last 18 months. In fact, many of the crops should have been planted in the fields. The fields are washing into the roads. That is all to do with cleaning of ditches and shucks, etc., as well as rainfall. But that's another story altogether. But yes, we're hoping for a dry time over the next few weeks. There may be the odd shower, but hopefully we start to see the land in and around Ireland, because don't forget, there's not that, I mean, there's only 1.8 million people live in Northern Ireland, so it gives you an idea of how rural it actually is. So there's a lot of land and a lot of water washing off that land into systems that really can't deal with it, not that much inside that period of time. And I feel that is the fear for Northern Ireland over the next while or two, whether we will actually see drier months ahead, or will we still be left with sodden ground?
Oh, Doogie, let's all pray for that, shall we? But you can bet your bottom dollar there will be a hosepipe ban, no matter how much it rains. Doogie Beattie in Northern Ireland with the latest on Storm Kathleen. Thank you very much. Now, a council leader in Lincolnshire has suggested something really, really controversial, naming the local museum after one of Britain's most divisive prime ministers in a bid to boost tourism. Grantham Museum is located at St Peter's Hill, close to where Mrs Margaret Thatcher was born. Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the story.
Britain's first female prime minister, Margaret Thatcher's mark on the country is deep. Now, in her hometown, Grantham, the local council leader suggests using her profile to attract tourists. Independent councillor Ashley Baxter of South Kesteven District says renaming Grantham Museum after Mrs Thatcher will boost footfall.
Far more people have heard of Margaret Thatcher and probably still talk about Margaret Thatcher than currently talk about Grantham. And I think that if it's a way to get more people to visit Grantham Museum, then really the name would help if it were named after Margaret Thatcher.
It is, of course, the greatest honour that can come to any citizen in a democracy.
Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister between 1979 and 1990. She led the country through Falklands and the Cold War. But the closure of coal mines under her premiership caused conflict across communities. The town is divided on renaming the museum after the Grantham-born Prime Minister.
That's just a bad idea. I don't think she was a very good Prime Minister.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? She was the first woman Prime Minister.
I don't think that she represents the working class people of this town.
Even in her hometown of Grantham, Margaret Thatcher is a divisive character. Her statue has been vandalised numerous times, making some here reluctant to use her legacy as an attraction for the town. Grantham boasts a rich history. Sir Isaac Newton was from here too.
This is Grantham Museum. We share the history for local people and for visitors.
Despite a Thatcher gallery inside, the museum thinks renaming after her is a bad idea. Run by volunteers, Vivian is a manager.
It should not be called the Margaret Thatcher Museum because it's about Grantham. Grantham people, Grantham exhibits, Grantham town.
And there's more to Grantham than...
There is so much more to Grantham than Margaret Thatcher.
I'm not even a fan of Margaret Thatcher. I'm not a Conservative. Because of that reaction, I think people are likely to think, oh, well, I wonder what's in that museum if it's about Margaret Thatcher.
Mrs Thatcher lived by her principles despite public opinion. They called her the Iron Lady, remembered for never turning. The museum refusing to change is entirely in her spirit. Will Hollis, GB News in Grantham.
Wow, interesting. How can that be controversial? Really? Margaret Thatcher. Anyway, this is Dawn Neeson on GB News Saturday, and there's lots more coming up on today's show, so stay tuned. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I don't think you can go and watch a Shakespeare play unless you already know it. It's almost like you have to understand the story and the characters, and perhaps have even done a bit of reading into it. Because if you went completely blind, especially in today's world where we don't speak in that kind of way, it is, I think, probably a bit alienating.
But Dawn is saying it is alienating at the moment because of the lack of representation.
You know what, the actual phrasing they use, right, OK, the disproportionate representation propagated white, able-bodied, heterosexual, cisgender male narratives. I'm sure there's people sitting in a room going, what's the most ridiculous thing we can come up with today?
Yes.
But are really just chuck all these words at it, cisgender, and it's just insane. Of course, Shakespeare was what it was back in the day, and that's why it's mostly blokes and they're mostly white.
And lots of speculation that he was actually gay, isn't there? Because he never really saw Anne Hathaway very often and stayed away a lot of the time. I don't know, maybe he was a big
He might have been transgender for all I know. I mean, I don't...
Biggins, I'm looking at you.
No, I think you're right. I mean, you know, I think that goes for the profession too. I mean, I do think I mean, I remember seeing Macbeth in London with Judi Dench and Ian McKellen, and it was one of the most exciting evenings ever. And it was a cold night at the Donmar Theatre, outside and inside, and that gave it atmosphere. There are certain things that you go along and see something else, and you think, I'll walk out in the interval.
Yeah. Macbeth is a sexy play, though.
Let's talk about, there's so many. Can I live to be 100?
Oh, this is depressing.
I think it is depressing. I like to stay here now. I don't want to live to 100.
Don't say that.
I'm right behind you.
I don't even want to. My father died at 63. That'll be me gone this year.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. I hope you got a nice cup of tea in the break, or possibly even something colder, because it's actually quite mild today, isn't it? It's boiling in here, but it's actually quite warm. Spring's almost on the way, unless you're Doogie Beatty in Northern Ireland, in which case it's blowing a gale storm. Right, now let's go to America, shall we? Donald Trump is continuing to face legal battles in his struggle to get into the White House. The judges overseeing two of his legal cases are refusing to accept his attempts to delay the prosecution. Joining me now is US political analyst Eric Ham, and one of my all-time favourite people. Eric, I'm just going to say hello, welcome to the show. Over to you. What's going on in Trump world? What's happening now?
Oh, so much. How much time do we actually have? We know that recently there were two major setbacks, both in Georgia as well in his Mar-a-Lago case. Both judges actually refused to dismiss the cases. And also what we know is that Donald Trump is still going to trial in Manhattan. And the judge in that case has actually extended the gag order against him to include family members of both the judge as well as the prosecution in that case. So what we're seeing here is Donald Trump is still moving forward with these cases, even though we know that he has put so much effort, so much time in trying to delay these trials until at least after the election, if not outright have them dismissed.
And does he stand a chance of doing that?
Having them delayed, that has certainly worked. Having them dismissed, that's not going to happen. Now, of course, while they have been delayed, it's still unclear when the Georgia trial is actually going to happen. We know the prosecution in that case wants that case to happen in August, but there has not been a date set for that trial to actually begin. In the Mar-a-Lago case, it appears as though, again, that case is still up in the air because we know that the prosecutor there, the special prosecution, Jack Smith, has already threatened to actually go to the 11th Circuit because he believes that the judge has made some unclear rulings. And we know that the appellate court has already smacked down that judge twice in that case. So it's unclear what's really going to happen in the Mar-a-Lago case. And also, we know in the January 6th insurrection case, we're still awaiting a ruling from the Supreme Court, which is expected to come sometime during this month.
Is any of this, Eric, I know we have this conversation almost on a weekly basis, is any of this actually affecting Donald Trump's popularity?
No, it's not. What we do know is, even though Donald Trump has now moved into the general election, these cases are still showing his base with him. Now, where this could actually become interesting is, of course, when the trials actually begin. And if, in fact, there's a guilty verdict before the election, I do suspect that we will get at least one verdict in one of these cases before the election. It's just a matter of what case that's going to be. It looks like it's going to be the hush money payment trial in Manhattan, where I do believe we could actually have a verdict in that case by the summertime.
Oh, my God. Eric, the one story that made us over here chuckle a bit today is that there is a chap over in America who is so fed up with the state of your politics, and we're fed up over here with ours, by the way, as well. You're not alone. He's actually changed his name by default to literally anyone else, talking about both Biden on one side and Trump on the other. I mean, does that kind of sum up how a lot of people are feeling in America?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we just heard from movie star Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who, of course, we know supported Joe Biden in 2020, announced, I think it was just yesterday, that he will not be supporting Joe Biden, but did say that he is going to keep his comments to himself as to who he will actually be voting for. So I think it pretty much left to interpretation what he's going to do. But I think what we're seeing is just the exacerbation that most people are feeling with politics in the United States, and particularly with both of these candidates. Even though we're going to see this race, we're going to see both candidates perhaps spend well over $1 billion each in this race.
That's amazing. That's the difference. I mean, we're in the same boat. We've got two political sides, and we're all pretty much thinking, oh, my God, anyone but them. You're in the same boat. But the difference is your candidates are spending a lot of money here.
Oh, absolutely. They're spending a lot of money and they're raising a lot of money. In fact, we know that Joe Biden did a fundraiser with Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, perhaps two of the most popular politicians in America, where they raised over $25 million. And we know that Donald Trump is hosting a fundraiser where he's expected to raise $50 million. So these are definitely candidates who are dialing for cash, lots of it. And of course, it seems as though there's a diminishing of returns that's taking place, because no matter how much they raise, no matter how much they spend, what we do see is that most Americans are simply are not excited by either of the candidates that are running and that will actually occupy the White House in January of 2025.
Oh, mirror image. Quickly, finally, before you go, Eric, the earthquake, did it affect you?
It did not have an impact in Washington, D.C., but of course, we know that New Yorkers are not experienced to this. And so it's been interesting to watch them actually share their experiences about what happened yesterday.
And of course, Eric, you being her #1 film, will know that there is a Taylor Swift song that we could link seamlessly to the earthquake discussion. Go on, what one? What one I was talking about? Every week you promise to learn this, honestly. It is Shake It Off. There you go. Now, I expect you to rehearse it for next week, so you are word perfect. That's Eric Ham. Thank you so much for joining us and having such a good sense of humour. Thank you, Eric. Discussing American politics. Yeah. Right, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Saturday, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. But first, it's Ray time with the headlines.
Wow. 2:31, our top stories this hour. Power cuts have left thousands without electricity across Ireland as Storm Kathleen brings strong winds Dozens of flights have also been cancelled due to gusts of up to 70 miles per hour in Northern Ireland and the west of Britain. Around 70 flights have been called off so far. A yellow weather warning for wind is in effect until 10 p.m. tonight. It covers Cornwall, much of Wales, parts of Lancashire, Cumbria, up into central Scotland and, of course, Northern Ireland too. Rail passengers have been facing fresh travel chaos as train drivers continue striking in a long-running pay dispute. Members of ASLEF at 6 companies have walked out, leaving some areas with no services all day. Chiltern, TransPennine Express and Northern are not running any trains, while there's a reduced service on Great Western, LNER and Heathrow Express. Also, engineering work means there'll be no trains between London, Paddington and Reading. The human torso found at a nature reserve in Salford belonged to a man aged older than 40, police say. A murder investigation was launched by Greater Manchester Police after the body part was found wrapped in plastic at Kersal Wetlands. The victim is believed to have been dead for a matter of days. DNA tests are ongoing to identify the man. And a Conservative MP says he was the first whistleblower to alert police to the parliamentary honey trap sexting scam. Bosworth MP Dr Luke Evans says he was the victim of cyber flashing as the Met launched its investigation. On Thursday, Tory MP William Ragg told The Times he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a dating app and was then manipulated into providing colleagues' phone numbers. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, it's dawn on GB News Saturday.
Thank you very much, Ray. Now, there's plenty more coming up on today's show, but before I tell you what I've got lined up for you, you wait to hear what this young lady's got. Nana Akua has joined me in the studio. I have to say, she's got her legs out. I'm not sure you can see.
They match the sofa, so you can't see them.
Nana, you do not look like this sofa. Nothing on earth.
I'm thinking with the same colour.
It's not very comfortable. It has been. Nana, what have you got coming up on your show?
Well, now I've got to say I'm very excited because my big 5 o'clock guest for Difficult Conversations is Jessica Alvers, and she's coming in live in the studio. She's had about £1 million worth of plastic surgery done on her. So we're going to hear, you know, what it was like going through it, because last week there was a big furore about plastic surgery and women going through it. So Jessica is obviously, she's a trans woman, and so it'd be great to hear everything she's been through. Plus, we've got some great debates. We'll be discussing whether it's time for perhaps us to withdraw from Israel in terms of sale of arms. We'll be speaking to Uri Geller, live in Israel. He always gives us his contribution. And Angela Levin will also be live, talking about the royals.
The royal stuff. It's very... Have you seen the Scoop yet on Netflix?
Not yet, no.
No.
I don't think I can bring myself to watch any of it.
Oh, why?
I can't stand watching things of people who are living, and it's some ridiculous story about none of it is even true. So I'll bear watching it.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm going to actually. I think I might have a quick look. But the one show you don't want to miss is Nana's show, which is coming up straight after this one. And remember, you can get in touch about all the topics we've been discussing today by emailing me on gbviews@gbnews.com or message it on our socials @gbnews. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Kathleen is the main talking point today, bringing some very strong winds across the UK. It's situated out to the west at the moment and slowly pushes its way northwards as we go through the rest of Saturday. Those winds will be strongest across western parts of the UK, with yellow wind warnings in force. We could see gusts here, particularly for Northern Ireland, Irish Sea coast of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps even up to 70 miles an hour this afternoon, so that could cause some travel disruption. Elsewhere, though, it will be a generally dry day. Some patchy rain in places, some heavy showers across western parts of Scotland, but highs of 20 or 21 degrees, perhaps even 22 across eastern parts of Anglia, so likely to be the warmest day of the year so far. Through Saturday evening, we see a band of heavy rain pushing up from the southwest, and there could be some hail and thunder mixed in there too, so some local flooding possible. Winds will gradually ease a little, but still remaining breezy overnight and turning a little drier across much of England and Wales into the early hours of the morning. And generally a mild night, temperatures holding up well above freezing across the UK. Sunday starts a little bit drier across England and Wales, but another band of rain pushes its way eastwards through the early morning. It will still be a very breezy day, but the strongest winds on Sunday likely to be across northwestern parts of Scotland. We could see gusts here of 60 to 70 miles an hour, so perhaps some travel disruption in places. There will be plenty of showers around on Sunday, and it will still be a mild day with temperatures above average and highs of 16 or 17 degrees.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
We are indeed. This is GB News Saturday. I'm Dawn Neeson on your telly, online and on digital radio. Now, back to our big story of the day, and the one that's got all of you sending in your messages as well. You really, some very strong opinions on this one. Like government security experts have been called in to analyse the WhatsApp messages at the heart of the Westminster sex scandal. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted, and sources have told GB News more are coming forward. It's after Tory MP William Wragg admitted to The Times he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then being manipulated into providing phone numbers of his colleagues. Joining me now is host of the Saturday 5, Benjamin Butterworth, and political commentator Suzanne Evans. Thank you so much for joining me on a Saturday afternoon. Now, I've been talking about this story a lot today. It's got loads of viewers getting in touch with what they feel about it. First, I'm going to come to you first, Suzanne. What do you make of this? Are you surprised by it?
Oh, I wish I were, but unfortunately I think there's just so much sleaze that circles around Westminster that I'm not really surprised. When I first heard this story, Dawn, I assumed that it was some kind of foreign state actor that had been deliberately targeting MPs. But no, it's down to the stupidity of a single individual MP. I cannot understand for the life of me how someone can go into public life and not realise that they can't go on dating apps like Grindr because it opens them up to so many compromising issues. If they're frankly can't understand that, they're too thick to be doing the job. And I think William Wragg should have the whip removed. I think he should possibly even resign, and there should be a by-election, even though we are close to a general election. I'm astounded by Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt standing by him. How can this man possibly be courageous, as they have said? He's been an absolute idiot.
Strong words, and many of you out there are agreeing with what Suzanne just said. What do you make of it, Benjamin?
I mean, I was shocked that he had done this and then handed over the personal phone numbers of other MPs. I mean, I just couldn't believe how cowardly it was. It was incredibly pathetic. I think your average teenager would know better than to fall for a trick like this. You know, lots of us will get unexpected WhatsApp messages and we will not respond to it. We'll know that it's something dodgy, you know, and we're not MPs, and yet he couldn't see that. What I would say, though, on the whip, however, is that we know that he had some months off recently because he had poor mental health. He had a breakdown. And so I strongly suspect the reason that the Tory party has chosen to sort of look the other way on this is because they know he's been in a very vulnerable state. And would it really help someone that's in that position in life?
So that should give you a free pass, should it? I'm sorry, I don't think so. I don't think ill health, whether it be physical or mental health, actually gives you a free pass to be a complete idiot and put national security at risk. I'm sorry. You know, we can all have sympathy for people who have mental health problems. Of course, absolutely. But if you're that bad and you're being that dangerous, arguably, then you still shouldn't be in the job, I'm afraid. This is not a normal job. This is a job with huge responsibility. You have access to state secrets. You have intel that the ordinary person in an ordinary job does not have. This is not flipping burgers at McDonald's, where, of course, everyone would have huge sympathy and say, well, of course you can carry on doing the job. This is an entirely different area here, and I'm afraid I think he should go. I stand by what I say.
I mean, I think in principle I would agree, but given that he's stepping down anyway, he's not going to restand as an MP. We're months from the election. He's had those problems. I think you can understand that the last thing you would want is to push somebody over the edge in that scenario. But I also think there's something to be said that if he's in that vulnerable state, that's why he fell for this mistake. And is he capable of being a Member of Parliament in the first place?
Or did he do this kind of issue anyway and then found himself in trouble, and that fed into his mental health problems? I think we're making a big assumption there, Benjamin, that he acted this way because of his mental health issues. It could, of course, be the other way around, that he was engaging in highly unethical, immoral behaviour, one would argue, and then he got caught, and then he got found out, and then he got depressed and anxious. I quite understand how that could have happened.
I mean, we were talking to Charlie Rowley earlier on, and he did have some sympathy. Because, I mean, it's not my way, Suzanne, you know, the modern dating way that, you know, young men in particular are inclined to send pictures of themselves.
I mean, I just find that incredible. Why would anyone do that? Maybe I'm just too old.
Well, yeah,
but I just
to be honest with you, I'm grateful I am.
Don't get it, yes.
Don't want any of those.
I kind of agree.
I mean, you know, Charlie did have some sympathy. You can understand that, you know, the pressures of Westminster where you're working long hours, you sort of like, you know, you are getting kicked from pillar to post, especially at the moment if you're a Tory, you know, you're rubbish, you're da-da-da-da-da. That, you know, it's taken a little bit of comfort from where he could. Obviously, you know, giving away telephone numbers was going too far, but maybe we should cut him a little bit of slack here on this one, Benjamin.
I mean, look, the idea that a Member of Parliament would be on a dating app, I think, is acceptable, right? They're human beings. Many of them are in their 20s or 30s in some cases.
That's stupid.
And so I think a dating app that is a conventional dating app is perfectly understandable, and I think you have to understand that they are regular people. They're going to want to try and find a partner. But the nature of the app that he was on is not necessarily used for finding meaningful romances. And so I think that matters, because I would say that someone in that position of responsibility, it's normal, I think, to exchange photos of that explicit nature on that particular app. And I think he should have known far better. But I strongly suspect, in fact, I know of other MPs that are on Grindr, the gay dating app. And I think that actually, you know, we've struggled to keep up with technology changing. And frankly, you know, when we have a new parliament, I think they should say to MPs, you know, apps of that nature are not acceptable in that office because it makes you vulnerable.
I don't think
Why should we have to tell them this? Surely it's common sense.
Exactly. I don't think you're fit for the job to be an MP if you don't understand that fundamentally, that you shouldn't be on something like Grindr. I wouldn't even go, I mean, I'm not an MP, I'm not elected, I'm just a political commentator, you know, but I am somebody that's been in the public eye. I wouldn't go on a dating app at all. No. Even now, when I'm single, it'd be lovely to meet somebody. Wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, because I know that I could be exploited. There would be potential repercussions. The very worst that could happen, you know, somebody could get some intimate information about me, shove it to the newspaper or whatever. I wouldn't be so stupid. So why MPs should not be allowed to be that stupid either.
We're running out of time. Well, I quite agree. Benjamin, finally, we're running out of time here. But I mean, it's interesting how Labour and Lib Dems have also stood back. This close to election, they could have really capitalised on this. Do you think they're doing so because of the mental health issue, Or do you think they're doing so because there may be more to come out involving MPs of those parties?
Well, we know that there are 2 MPs that sent explicit photos in response to the unknown WhatsApp numbers. Now, we don't know the parties of those 2 MPs, so maybe one or both of them are not Tory MPs. I suspect that one of the reasons they've held off is because they know that this particular MP has had mental health struggles. But I also think there's probably plenty of people in other parties who've done very similar things.
As I say, but never for the grace
They're all
of
at
God.
it.
Well, and they're running the country in between sending pictures. Suzanne Evans, Benjamin Button, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Saturday. Loads more coming up on today's show. After being told that 100-millilitre hand luggage rules in airports were going to be scrapped, yay! Why on earth are we now being told that rule is here to stay? Boo. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's a remarkable story, isn't it?
Amazing.
Extraordinary. And also, she was unflappable, apparently, the Princess Royal.
She's
just
brilliant.
refused to get out of the car and said, I'm not going anywhere. Extraordinary. Well, Jim Beaton was awarded the George Cross for protecting the princess, and delighted to say joins us now, along with the former head of royalty protection, Di Davis. Jim, you won't remember, but I met you some time ago at the Imperial War Museum when Princess Anne was opening an exhibition to do with the George Cross, and you were there reunited with her. And you told me then what great admiration you had for the princess, cool under fire, but you didn't do so badly yourself.
It was probably my job. And also, I had a wee bit of police training, not very much, but a little bit, whereas Princess Anne had nothing. And yet, the way she displayed it, you would have thought she'd been highly trained to deal with any type of that situation.
Even though you'd had some training, you took 3 bullets for the princess. You effectively stood between her and a deranged gunman.
Well, I was supposed to be a protection officer, really, so I just tried to fuddle about. You must remember that back in 1974, there was no communication, and we were extremely lucky that Michael Hills, who was outside Clarence House and nearby, had got one of the fast police radios, or radios on his shoulder, so he was able to send a message out. Otherwise, we would have just been relying on the good old public to phone in and say there was something happening.
Yeah.
So times have changed drastically.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday. Coming to the end of our time together. I'm Dawn Neeson. I'm on your telly, online and on digital radio, but not for much longer. Now, holidays. Looking forward to your holidays? Looking forward to mine. Brits will be forced to comply with the old 100-millilitre hand luggage rules after airports across the country were given a 1-year extension to install new scanning technology. The initial deadline to deliver the changes in all airports throughout the UK had been set for June 2024, which would have freed us all up from those really irritating empty your water bottles out, can't take shampoo, etc., etc., for the first time in ages. But it's not really happening, is it? Oh, God. Joining me now is travel editor at The Sun, Lisa Bino, to explain what's going on here. Hello, Lisa. Thank you very much for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. Lisa, I thought we were going to be free of all this, those irritating, oh, my God, it's 15 millilitres over the limit, we've got to put it in a bin somewhere. What's happening?
Yeah. It is really sad. Unfortunately, you know, this was quite an arbitrary date that was set by the government to say that all airports had to have these scanners in by this time. It didn't really take into account the fact that we've got ageing infrastructure here along the way as well. These airports weren't built to house these type of equipment. Now, these scanners are amazing. I went through Stansted Airport just last week. We actually went through one of those scanning aisles and it was incredibly quick. You didn't have to take your laptop out or your Kindle. You didn't have to take out your liquids. It was fantastic. It was really good. But they are extremely heavy. So for the likes of somewhere like Gatwick or Heathrow, it's going to involve reinforcing floors. And also you've got to bear in mind, they've got to put this equipment in at the same time as still running the airport as normal. And as we all know, all of our airports are pretty much at capacity at the moment. You know, we're really bounced back after the pandemic. That's the other thing as well. You know, we had 3 years in the pandemic where these airports lost billions. And now having to come up with this technology, it's hugely expensive. And then do all of these reconstructions, you know, really reinforcing floors, changing the systems around. It's been a huge challenge. And the government has at least admitted that, yes, this can't be something that can be fixed overnight.
But there are some airports, aren't there, Lisa, that have managed to install the scanners. Which ones are those?
Right, so if you fly out of London City or Teesside airports, both of those now do have their scanners, and it's just the CT scanners, nothing else. So you don't have to worry if you're going out of those airports. But they're small airports in comparison to the likes of Heathrow and Gatwick. You know, they're tiny in comparison, so they haven't got anywhere near as many security lanes that they're trying to actually change over. And the other thing to really bear in mind as well is the fact that it's all very well and good us leaving the country through one of these great new airports with the new scanners, but unless the corresponding airport in the country you're going to has the same scanners, you're still going to have to adhere by those rules to get back into the UK.
Actually, that's an interesting point, Lisa. How many other countries around the world, I mean, certainly the holiday destinations like Spain and France and places like that where we might be going on our summer holiday, how many of those airports have actually got this new tech?
Well, I flew into Rome Airport last week and there was nothing there then. And I flew out of Barcelona Airport this week and again, there was nothing there then. I have been to Turku in Finland and there, yes, there was actually the scanners in place. So I think it's very much that we're, along with others, you know, seeing this gradually come in. But you have to bear in mind that for British people over the next year or so, we've also got the challenges of the entry-exit system that's going to be coming in for the European Union, and the new visa system. And I've seen all of the sort of the tech already in place in many of those airports, but this is still going to be something that's going to be yet another problem for us. We're all going to have our eyes scanned and our fingertips scanned to go through into the European Union. That's yet to come, and it's been delayed several times, but there's still quite a few challenges ahead in terms of technology as we all move into this sort of new digital era.
Oh, Lisa, you haven't cheered me up, but I'm still looking forward to a holiday. Lisa Bino, travel editor of The Sun there. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, that's it. We've come to the end. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News on Saturday. And just to say thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciate your company and all your messages as well, especially the clean ones. But don't go too far because Nana is up next. But she's got a cracking show lined up. Don't want to miss it. But let's find out what the weather's doing first with Ellie.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Kathleen is still very much the talking point of our weather over the next day or so. Situated out to the west of the UK, it's going to bring us some very strong winds through the rest of Saturday and into the start of Sunday. Those strongest winds likely across western parts of the UK, Northern Ireland and Scotland, perhaps seeing gusts of 60 to 70 miles an hour through the rest of the evening. But it's through Saturday evening, a band of showers pushes its way north and eastwards. These likely to turn very heavy with some hail and thunder mixed in for southwestern parts of the UK. We'll gradually turn drier for much of the UK through the early hours of Sunday morning, and it'll be a mild start to Sunday as well, with temperatures generally holding up in the high single figures. So after a brief drier start across the UK, another band of showers pushes its way north and eastwards through Sunday morning, again turning quite heavy in places, perhaps some localised flooding and travel disruption. Still a widely windy day on Sunday, the strongest winds though across northwestern parts of Scotland. Again, there could be gusts here of 60 to 70 miles an hour, so there could be some travel disruption through the afternoon. Another mild day across the UK, but temperatures down a touch on Saturday, maybe 16 or 17 degrees in the south, but still above average. Monday starts dry for Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, but further south, another band of rain pushes up from the southwest through Monday morning, so turning very wet and windy across these parts through Monday afternoon. Remaining unsettled through the first part of next week, temperatures still remaining a little bit above average, but hints of something drier through the second half of the week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.